Hey, welcome back, movie fans, to The Movie Date with Rob and Matt, a podcast about people who enjoy watching movies but don't want to be too smug about it.
That's right.
I'm Matt.
I'm Rob.
And we're back.
It's been a while.
It has been a good solid minute. We were even sitting around thinking, what was the last thing we did?
I miss you.
Every
time we don't get together for a while, I'm like, I miss Matt.
Yeah,
I miss talking about my cartoons and movies.
Not only do we get to talk about cartoons and movies, we can have other people listen to us talk about cartoons.
That's
and
right.
movies.
That's the goal in life.
Yeah, and obviously right now we're still in the midst of
COVID.
The never-ending quarantine, for all you dummies' sake. So, because some of you don't know how to act.
My uncle has coronavirus.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Everyone, I've had two bands that delayed because they thought they might have come into contact with someone, so they had to go to get tested, and both of them were negative, thankfully. But
yeah, thankfully.
It's cropping up. We're at 270,000 casualties or whatever, and it's no
a day.
good.
There's 2,000 a day.
Each day, someone said each day is a mini 9/11.
Yeah,
and it's true.
And guess what? It's real.
But for 9/11,
unlike some of my customers who don't think it's real.
Yeah. And for 9/11, we rearranged our entire defense apparatus and made changes to the government for COVID.
Launched two whole wars,
killed
created whole branches of everything. But
created a Homeland Security Department that's just really the Department of Defense bloated.
And people went out and protest that. People went out and protest that. Yeah. But there was a while after that where we all were just like, wow, that was really violent and sucked, and a bunch of people died, and it feels really bad. Now it's like, oh, there's a horrible virus that happens every day. Let's all go outside of governors' houses with guns and say that you're stopping me from going to my salon. Yeah. I hate it. You know what's great though? Movies.
Yeah, movies are great.
Except when
unless you're Christopher Nolan.
You want to start with that real quick?
Yeah, we probably should.
Because I got the article up. So
HBO Max or WB has decided to move their not move their entire slate, but they are sending their entire film slate also to HBO Max. So when it hits theaters, it is also going to be available on HBO Max. I think it is free for the people who have HBO Max. Mm-hmm. So like when Wonder Woman 84 hits in a few 2 weeks or whatever, I get it for free, right? Because I have HBO Max,
and I've got. I think I also have HBO Max or not. I don't know. I think.
And the amount of stuff going there is staggering. There's some huge blockbusters going there. So the big ones that I know, obviously Zack Snyder's Justice League, but that was way before any of this was announced. The first thing that opened the floodgates to this was Wonder Woman 84 was finally said, we're just going to release it on Christmas. Patty Jenkins released a thing that her quote on it kind of led me to insinuate she didn't want this to happen. She wanted it to hit theaters. She said something like, well, we've waited and we, at some point you just got to kind of give in. So we're going to do it here. I don't know if I'm sure she's glad people get to see it.
Right.
I insinuated that she wasn't too happy about it.
Well, I mean, who would be, you want this. Your first movie was so successful in terms of really being a standout in this. And obviously, we could talk about, DCEU, but we can agree that Wonder Woman has been lauded as the best of it thus far.
Which I disagree.
Right.
I don't like that third act, but it's okay.
Yeah, but we're the general public sees it as
and
successful.
I'm super stoked to see 84, and some critic reviews have come in and say it's a nice, fresh sequel that takes a lot of chances and is not I think one person said it feels more like Patty Jenkins and less like Patty Jenkins kind of working within the photograph Zack Snyder gives her and be like, you got to tell the backstory of this photograph or whatever, which I appreciate.
Beyond that into this very unique setting.
The 80s.
Also, I'm ready for more Pedro Pascal because he's been so great in Mando, and then seeing him as Lord will be.
Yeah, Maxwell Lord was one of my favorite villains growing up because I used to love to read JLI, which is the Justice League International, which I was called Justice League, but more fun, or a little more goofy. And Maxwell Lord kills, depending on which version, the original Blue Beetle.
Yes,
Ted Kord.
Yes, he does kill Ted Kord.
Which causes, I think, Captain Atom and both Booster Gold.
Well, Booster Gold definitely goes nuts.
Goes ape on it, and Captain Atom, who was my favorite superhero, and I always get mad because every time there's a new run of DC stuff, I'm like, Captain Atom, Nope, nothing.
Still on the bench.
Yeah, but him
always the bridegroom, never the bride.
Yeah, him and bridesmaid.
Bridegroom.
Yeah, him and Booster Gold go on like a manhunt and hunt him down and kill him.
That's awesome.
It's kind of cool.
I'll because that was the late 2000s, I think, because I remember everyone really loved the Blue Beetle Booster Gold buddiedom.
They're cool. Some people have said get Nathan Fillion and John Krasinski and do a buddy movie, and I was like, I'd watch that.
You can get Nathan Fillion. I'm sure we can find someone a little more dynamic than John Krasinski.
You don't like John Krasinski? As an actor, or like he's
fine. I have the hot take that I thought the Quiet Place wasn't very good.
Well, the Quiet Place is also kind of stolen. Do you know about this?
Not particularly.
Little tangent. So the Quiet Place was it's the people who wrote, because it says like written by someone else and John Krasinski. John Krasinski found their script and kind of did a rewrite, which is normal. It happens.
That happens all the time. Yeah, you put your script out there.
But the script of the original script and John Krasinski's script is very, very reminiscent of a film called, it's with Stanley Tucci, and it's called I can't remember if it's called The Silence or something like that, where like an unseen force like it is attacking people and you can't or it can hear you very well, so you have to be quiet or whatever. They're very, very, very reminiscent. Yeah, and so like The Quiet Place is kind of
a ripoff.
Kind of a ripoff. I mean, like, look, I thought it was all right, but that being said,
it had some really good points, but it also had some points that I really didn't. I should have brought this up in my horror movie thing, but
my
because that's another movie that's not being able to come out is the next Quiet Place. And since we talked about Take Shelter, it's been confirmed that Quiet Place 3 will be written and directed by Jeff Nichols.
Yeah, good for that. That's cool.
That seems like a series that he'd do well in.
I agree. I'm worried he's going to be too subtle. I remember Take Shelter. I was like, you don't have to be so subtle, man.
I know. I want, because my biggest complaint, and I may have said this before, my biggest complaint about A Quiet Place is it's actually very loud. I want it to really lean into that gimmick, and instead it's got a loud ass soundtrack. Everyone's whispering very loudly, and I'm like, this is completely the whole thing about being quiet is completely inconsequential. And I thought the monster design looked like garbage.
Yeah, I think it looks kind of like just
they look like Demogorgons.
Yeah, or like the aliens from the Steven Spielberg War of the World or something.
Yeah,
long spindly things. Or whatever.
Maybe it's because I've surrounded myself with so much horror art. And I'm like, nah, this is boring. It doesn't look like Siren Head. It doesn't look like Trevor Henderson.
2 out of 10.
And everyone else like, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. I'm like, yawn. Y'all never played a Silent Hill.
The only thing I would disagree with that is the soundtrack. I thought because it's such a quiet movie, the score kind of does a lot of the heavy lifting for the movie. And I like, I think it was Marco Beltrami did the score, who I really like. Anyway,
but
yeah,
circling back,
a lot of these movies are going to HBO Max, including some big ones are Matrix 4, Dune, which I'm super stoked for,
The Batman,
which
after that trailer disappeared off the face of the earth.
Well, because they had
nothing they can do about it.
Well, because Robert Pattinson got coronavirus for a second, which delayed them, and then I think they had unfortunately a death on the set, or not on the set, but on the like a stunt guy or a grip or someone maybe have got it and passed away,
something like that. I think I remember
originally
that was so long ago.
Originally, they were going to push the release date. Now I think they're not pushing the release date. It's going to be 2021, but they're going to put it on HBO Max or whatever. And you know what? Like, given the trouble this movie kind of had, like the unluckiness of starting production right at COVID, like whenever it comes out, I'll see it. I really liked that first trailer, so we'll go from there.
Oh yeah, I'm stoked.
Kong versus Godzilla. We got a little 3-second clip of that too, which is just Kong roaring at somebody or roaring, and then Godzilla swimming up. And I'm super stoked for that.
Yeah, that's
even though I'm lukewarm. People seem to mostly like that franchise. The first 2 got good reviews. The second one didn't get, or the third one, King of the Monsters, didn't get good reviews. But I think it's better.
Than the first one. Yeah, because the first one was Gareth Edwards, right?
Yes, who I like a lot.
Yeah,
he also did those 2 movies. They're called Monsters.
Yes.
Yeah, and he did those on his laptop as well.
And of course he did Rogue One.
Which he kind of taken away from him at the end there, but I would say the great
they gave him the credit on it. He said, you did it.
The great thing that Gareth does well, which I like in Godzilla and Monsters and Rogue One, is scale. Like when I remember the first trailer of his Godzilla when the flares come up Like they shoot, and you see Godzilla's torso, and you're just like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
like,
no, that first trailer where it's playing, I don't know that composition, but it's like, I forgot what the composition is. It's a very famous composition, but you see the troops coming down in the planes and doing the jump down, and it's all the city's black, and then the red flares go. That was
dope.
too cool.
Yeah.
That I remember seeing that, and me and my friends were all like, holy shit.
Yeah, the problem with the movie is it makes you wait too long for the fight, and the fight takes place in like a gray hellscape that you can't see well.
There were some parts of that did work. Like one of my favorites is when they're
he uses his super breath down the thing's mouth.
That was awesome.
That's pretty cool.
That was pretty cool. When they're on the tram rail at the airport,
I remember what you're talking about.
The lights are coming back on, and then you see one of the the mutagens or whatever. I forgot what they're called. The spindly spider-looking guys, just come up out of nowhere, and it was like that was actually really shocking. I was like, oh, because for one thing, they picked a really cool design for the bad guys, even though they all look the same.
Yeah,
that's why, as I told you earlier, when they got to King of the Monsters, Ghidorah
is like a miniature, like I think they call like I'm thinking of Rodan. Ghidorah is like they call him a miniature extinction event. Mm-hmm. Like if he comes out, like you're going back to the Stone Age for.
And then Rodan is like his Starscream or their Starscream.
Yeah,
like it's like yeah, I'm Ghidorah's hype man, and I love that. And then
I like that, like when Ghidorah, like this is the thing about that movie. I love the fact that in that movie, each one of these monsters, like in like the first one, I'm like, oh no, they destroyed San Francisco. That's what San Francisco's there for in movies, to be destroyed.
If it's not Tokyo, it's San Francisco. Yeah, because that's the U.S.'s Tokyo.
And when like Rodan flies over a village and everything just blows away when he passes over.
Yeah, it was dope.
And I was just like,
each monster got a moment, and then when Mothra shows up, it's great because everyone loves Mothra.
Yeah, they team up. He gets a little team up action, and I like that. Like at the end, a lot of people said they see the same thing, that like every DC movie ends with like fighting a giant gray guy amidst a field of fire and lightning and smoke. It's kind of that. Like that seems to be like one WB's thing with their big action movies. I'm not a huge fan of it all the time, although in some cases, like in a Man of Steel or something, I gleefully embrace the carnage. But I don't love the ending, and it feels thin on characters. But when I go to see a giant monster movie, I want big giant monster action, and I get it in spades. And in the middle you have Kong Skull Island, which we talked about, which I think is also great. It's weird that they accidentally created this cool little franchise that people seem to like, and I'm super stoked for Kong versus Skull Island.
And all that's run by Legendary as well. Yeah, and because going back to because I think I've talked about it before, is like depending on how this movie goes will determine a lot of what Legendary does next, because Legendary has the rights to produce that Mobile Suit Gundam movie.
So if you want that Gundam movie, you need to watch Kong. You need to watch Kong versus Godzilla.
And if you're like, I don't want to see that put to screen, I'm like, well, the guy who did
who don't want to see Gundam put to screen?
Yeah,
name one person who earnestly doesn't want to see
a lot of. Well, it's the same with like this the Cowboy Bebop series. I'm excited for that, but I also have every one of my friends is like, I don't need that because the show is fine alone. Don't do anything with it. And I'm like, I get that, but I'm a fanboy. I want to see more of that.
You don't want to see Spike and Ed or whatever. What's the little girl's name with the red hair?
Ed.
Yeah, I was right. Yeah.
Who's the only person who hasn't been cast yet? Everybody else has been cast.
Who's the cast, real quick? They said a long time back in the day. They said Keanu Reeves was going to do it.
It's John Cho now
as Spike.
Yeah, John Cho's
good.
Yeah,
that's
John
good
Cho. And in fact, they had to halt filming not because of coronavirus, but because Cho got a really bad injury on set.
Oh no!
And then coronavirus hit and it held everything back.
He'd be good. I'm thinking of him as Sulu in Star Trek, and I'm like, I can see that working.
Well, he's so cool. Like that's the thing, but
he doesn't ever do anything. You only see him like once every 3 years. So like, I wonder where he's at.
Let me see about that cast. So yeah, they've added new people as of November. Let's see.
Who are the rest of the crew? Get to them.
Cowboy Bebop live action. The space western hails from Tomorrow Studios. Written by Chris Yost.
Chris Yost. He's done some stuff I like.
Yep, he's done the Thor movies. He's also done some other TV stuff.
John Cho, Mustafa Shakir.
Yeah, Mustafa Shakir will play Jet.
Daniela Pineda. I don't know who that guy is for Jet. And
Mustafa.
Alex Hassel have all been cast in different roles.
Yeah, Alex Hassel, who played Translucent And he's been in a bunch of stuff. He's going to play Vicious.
That works. I'm trying to remember that guy from The Boys.
Elaine Satine will play Julia, who is probably just going to show up.
You know who I thought would have been great for Jet, who if they could have cast, would have been Jason Momoa.
Sure, but he needs to be much older, and I've always seen
he
Jet
can play scraggly.
African American.
Yeah, I guess he's in that vague skin tone where it's olive, so you don't know. Like, do you cast a white guy?
Well, and it's also
Bo
Billingsley's performance as him voice acting in the original series is just so iconic.
That guy's voice, so
yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah, come on, Spike. And I'm just like, yeah, no, he can't be anything else but that image. Like, my original choice for who I wanted to play Spike was Lakeith Stanfield, but like, because I thought that would be dope.
For Spike?
Yeah,
I don't see it.
He's so chill, and I can see that.
Yeah, but he doesn't strike me as like a killer. Like, you got to get someone who has like that weird hidden facet.
He can do it. I could see him do it, but Spike's pretty laid back before he becomes a killer.
But I see him as like the book. I see him as like more of a bookish. What's the guy from Death Note called?
Kira.
No, that's the bad guy. The guy who.
Well, it's because he plays L.
Yeah,
because
good casting. Terrible movie. Like,
he's one of my favorite actors. I love seeing. I
always say he's the Black Michael Cera. He's Black Michael Cera if he was.
He's way cooler than that.
Yeah, he is. I'm saying, like, if he was Black Michael Cera, if Michael Cera was like doing more interesting movies or whatever. But like, yeah,
but they've announced a bunch of people for that, so that's happening.
All right. So these people don't want a Gundam movie.
Well, so the person who's supposed to be doing the screenplay for it, or is doing the screenplay, is the guy who does
Garth.
Nope.
Ennis? No, not Garth Ennis.
No, you're very close. It's a comic book guy who did forgot the name of that popular series that everybody really loves. Brian K. Vaughan.
Yeah.
So Brian K. Vaughan is the one who did not Fables. I keep wanting to say Fables. He didn't do Fables. His is
He's scuffed really good.
God damn it!
It's all right.
It's a series I need to read. Everyone says it's incredibly good, and I can't remember what it's called. He did The Runaways, Why the Last Man.
It's cool.
And then his most famous series.
So how does that connect with the people who don't want this movie? Because he seems like a good choice.
Well, I think that's a discussion in general about adaptations all around.
Here's my thing about
Saga.
Yeah,
Saga is Brian K. Vaughan's series. Is that I think that and I don't mean to make this into another discussion about anime. I'm not the biggest anime fan in the world. I promise.
He lied. He's wearing guys. He's dressed up as Boomy from One Piece right now. So
I've never even watched One Piece.
You're a liar. He's lying to you, audience. He's dressed up. He's got the straw hat and everything.
Nah, his
rubber arm is stretching over here and trying to choke
me. Like tapping on your shoulder. I think particularly a lot of fandoms have been burned so often, like Dragon Ball Evolution.
Name two more than that.
Dragon Ball Evolution,
only
Ghost in the Shell. You just mentioned Death Note.
Yeah, I did mention Death Note, didn't I?
Countless video game adaptations based on Japanese source material.
I think Ghost in the Shell is a solid movie. To compare that to Dragon Ball Evolution, they're worlds apart. It's not the best adaptation of it. It misses some of the cool vibes. It's kind of a knockoff Blade Runner-y world, but like they went for it. A lot of effort and time and money. Yes, Scarlett Johansson was cast to play like a Japanese actress or whatever, and they weirdly wiggled around it to be like, well, she's a robot, but she was originally Japanese. It felt almost like a reshoot, but I know it's not. But like, I think if we got a Mobile Suit Gundam that was like akin to that movie, that was akin to like Ghost in the Shell, I'd be okay with that. It may not be everything I want it to be, but I'd be I
feel like we've also discussed this before too, about like what I would want and what I see and everything.
Oh, like yeah. But my point here's my larger point about adaptations. Look, they made a terrible movie. This is another example. I should not bring this up. It doesn't help my argument. Last Airbender.
Last Airbender was on my mind.
Not an anime,
too.
but still. But like the adaptation is atrocious.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you're one of those people who's like, I don't need this, I just want to watch the original series. Well, you have the perfect version then. You have the original series, so you can just watch that. So I never got mad at Last Airbender. I did get a little mad at it, but I have the purest.
More baffled how did it get that bad?
Yeah, but like, and also they're making another Netflix series of that, like a live action one. But like, my thing was like, I have the perfect distilled, uncut version that I love, which is the original series. So if I was ever like, this isn't like, well, I already have that the perfect version,
and it's not going to be. It's not going
to vanish off my shelf, my Blu-ray or whatever.
And it's not going to be a situation where you can kind of understand why. As much as I don't like their arguments, you can understand why a lot of people get so fumed about both the Star Wars prequels and the new series, is because it's not like, oh, well, Star Wars can exist on its own. These directly go into it. It is part of their plot.
It makes it harder. So like you can undo something in a previous movie or make it worse.
Or if you
whereas Gundam can be whatever. You could make new characters.
Because it's not set in the same universe, nor is it going to change. See,
he's not making a direct adaptation of the original Mobile Suit Gundam.
We don't know. He could. But if they do, you gotta put 50 episodes into one movie, and then hope that you have to do enough of that one movie to make it work financially to get a sequel and finish it up.
It's like what we said on the Dungeons and Dragons when I went on my Dungeons and Dragons rant. You told me I can't have it.
Take your toys away.
I said just like
careful, you're rolling with disadvantage.
You create very good. You create a world, and you create characters, and you create a mission, and then you just send them on a thing. The formula, to put it in air quotes, is already there, and it's a formula that is broad enough that it can be unique and interesting.
It's Mad Libs. Mad Libs. Every story is Mad Libs. Yeah. Just fill it out, and it goes the way it does.
Remake anything. I don't care about. There's no movie I can think of a convincing reason why it shouldn't be remade. And then maybe there's like one or two, like don't make Saving Private Ryan again, like maybe or like that. But like when it comes to like a bigger franchise, even like Star Wars, I'm like 20 years from now, if you remade A New Hope, I wouldn't give a shit. Like, and my original version doesn't go away. Yeah. Star Wars fans will get up in arms. They get up in arms about everything.
Yeah.
I'm on a Star Wars group right now called the Non-Toxic Star Wars Fandom, and the hot takes on that group are ridiculous. Lists that don't make any sense ranking-wise. Someone has Attack of the Clones as their number 3. What? Like, Empire is like near the bottom. What are you talking about?
People are gonna die on that hill, man.
And but here's my thing.
There are people who are probably looking at Mandalorian after everything it's given us and just be like, it's garbage compared to the prequels.
I'm half in the bag so far on season 2. I love some episodes, and some episodes I'm like, this is.
We'll save everything because a lot of people haven't watched.
I need to see how it ends.
Yeah, and we've got two episodes left, 3 episodes left.
1 or 2, definitely not 3. I think it's like 7 or 8 episodes.
Because this last episode was very short, but also a lot happened. That's it.
It did happen. I did feel a small stench of like, this is revisionism, historical revisionism. Boba Fett's an idiot. He's supposed to be an idiot.
We don't want to give away too much.
Right. Okay, he's not supposed to be this. That being said, it's cool seeing Temuera Morrison again.
Yeah, he's cool. and Robert Rodriguez directed it. That's not a
spoiler. That's the thing that I was like, what? Really got him to do it? Robert Rodriguez is great. He needs to do more stuff. Like he'll do a little movie just for his kids called Shark Boy and Lava Girl that he doesn't. He'll do write it, music, visual effect, everything, and then he'll do like Battle Angel Alita or whatever. Yeah, or something like crazy.
And I want to do that. And they're like, you know what, Robert Rodriguez? Yes, you can.
Do whatever you want.
Do what you want.
He did Sin City, like the Desperado movie. It's like I like a lot of his stuff.
There's a lot to like. Once Upon a Time in Mexico is really fun.
He's really cool, and if anything, he might be a guy that would. He's like, you know what he's like? He's like Zack Snyder-y Guillermo del Toro. He's like that. He's like a crazy wild man who just goes and makes things.
What he wants.
Yeah. But he would make a great like Mobile Suit Gundam movie, I feel like.
Maybe.
He's got the chops to where he can do like, I didn't love Battle Angel Alita.
Which I've heard I would like. I would like.
But it's really cool. It's got some nice heartfelt moments. It has a very obvious, we're setting up a sequel here that I'm pretty sure will never happen. Christoph Waltz is kind of cool. There's some really cool like cyberpunk androids and bounty hunters in it that are kind of cool. Ed Skrein from Deadpool.
Yes.
The bad guy, he plays a cyborg samurai whose body is just mechanical except for his face,
which is just reminds me of Jetstream Sam from Metal Gear Rising Revengeance.
Yeah,
which we'll talk about Metal Gear in a second.
Yeah.
Let's get back.
Let's get back to our topic. Yeah. So Dune is going.
You can obviously tell we haven't been able to talk in a while because we're chomping at the bits.
Yeah.
I love it.
Dune is gonna come there. They released a small new Dune trailer.
Which I've not seen.
Yeah, and it was. I'm really excited for it. You got to convince me on Timothée Chalamet being an action man because he's so small and tight. He's like 3 feet tall. He's a hobbit.
Yeah, he's a hobbit boy.
But also they might do a time jump.
But that character also isn't very an action heavy character. He's mostly.
It's true.
I mean, he does get into a couple of one-on-one fights, but not until later.
Yeah.
Really.
So I remember Jason Momoa said something like he's not going to see it. He said he's going to wait to see it with his family and stuff because very rarely do they get to see. A lot of his stuff is like R-rated. He doesn't get a chance to share that with them, which is cool. He looks good. I'm excited to see him as Duncan Idaho.
Yeah, he looks pretty solid.
Matrix 4 going there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get to the Christopher Nolan aspect of this.
Yeah, because I had this. Wait a second. What's this breaking news here?
We got breaking news?
Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Kristen Dunst, and Emma Stone are confirmed to be rejoining with Tom Holland in Marvel's Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, I knew that.
Oh,
I thought you did too.
I didn't know that.
Well,
I didn't know that Maguire and everybody else had been involved.
Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and Alfred Molina and Jamie Foxx.
We might as well hop into that right now.
Yeah. So that's happening, and I'm stoked for it. I hope it's not just a one and done thing. Because it feels like a big thing to just be like
we're just Spider-Versing for a second.
And I think the rumor, my friend Luke, who we might have on at one point, he says what they're doing is like they're kind of setting up the multiverse in WandaVision, and then they're gonna
leaning into it with everything
going into it with Spider-Man 3, and then it kind of caps off in the new Doctor Strange.
That's kind of a smart idea because after Thanos, everyone's just kind of like, well, where do you go from there?
Kang the Conqueror. Do Kang the Conqueror. That's what you need to do. Because you can bring in the Fantastic Four. Like, that's my point.
That's true.
Or
bring in Galactus. I mean, Galactus is obviously because you end up in the Dragon Ball Z situation of who's stronger now. It's like, oh, we defeated the greatest cosmic evil. Now the next one.
The cool thing about Kang, though, is he is interdimensional. So he brings in the multiverse and timelines and stuff. That's the only place you could go from there.
But you got to really land it because a lot of people don't know that character as much as they know Thanos and Galactus.
That's true. So Thanos, not Thanos, King the Conqueror is a descendant of Reed Richards. I think he's Franklin Richards, if I'm not mistaken.
Whoa!
So and he becomes
I didn't know that.
through a whole bunch of like fucking around with the time stream or whatever, he chooses to take their futuristic weaponry. He's a descendant of him, and he goes back in time and like conquers the world and becomes King the Conqueror. He looks real stupid. You got to do something with that outfit.
Yeah, you got to change things up.
But yeah, so Marvel's got that figured out, but we won't get to any of that till we get to like Black Widow or whatever. So
right.
We'll have to wait and see.
Because that's probably something that's going to come out on Disney Plus.
I mean, eventually you'd have to at some point because you can't sit on that for that ever. I'm lukewarm on this movie as
already,
and
then it's like this would have been so much.
2010 is when this should have come out, or whatever, or 11 or whatever.
Sometime after Iron Man 2.
Yeah,
or before. So we'll swing around back to it. Let's get to what Chris Nolan, noted man,
noted fussy man,
says this. Some of our industry's biggest filmmakers and most important movie stars went to bed the night before thinking they were working for the greatest movie studio and woke up to find out they were working for the worst streaming service. Let's see. Christopher Nolan said, whose relationship with Warner Brothers dates back to Insomnia in 2002. He also said, Warner Brothers had an incredible machine for getting a filmmaker's work out everywhere, but in theaters and in home, they are dismantling it as we speak. They don't even understand what they are losing. Their decision makes no economic sense, and even the most casual Wall Street investor can see the difference between disruption and dysfunction. And instantly hearing that, what he's getting at is something I, as a movie-going audience person, don't understand immediately what his beef is, because he's putting it in very emotional, esoteric terms.
Yeah. I'll show my cards.
And I'll show my cards about it afterwards. This is
calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, they're not, here's the reality. We're in a pandemic. We're not losing anything. If you sit on these movies for a while, you will lose money. So that's so if they sit and release them all in theaters, because here's the thing, it's not like we're going to get a vaccine and then pandemic's over. That's not how it works. It's going to be with us for a while. And if everyone wears their masks, wear your masks, people. You can go out, just wear your masks, and don't get right next to the guy in line. Masks work. You ever try to blow up? Put your mask on, pick up a candle, and try to blow it out. You can't
do it. Therefore, it can't get into you either.
Therefore, when you sneeze and the particles go out of your mouth, they don't go as far. So they don't
take it from me, who has had bad sneezing fits, and I've sneezed into my mask to the point where I have to just get a new one because it's nasty then.
Yeah. So anyway, it's not like we're just going to go and like it's going to go back to normal and everyone's going to flood into the theaters.
No.
Even if you release these films, I don't know, 7 months from now, when we flattened the curve,
right,
which we probably won't.
Next summer.
Unless Joe Biden comes up with a real plan, which I hope he does, to get us all back on track or whatever. There's going to be a diminishing return when people go back into the movie theater.
Yeah. What originally was, when we talked about it back in the summer or so, where it's like, oh, because at that time it was even optimistic, 5 to 6 months ago, where we're like, the movie theaters are going to reopen by November and December, and all these movies are going to come out in competing rows. Well, even that's now not happening at all.
Yeah.
But
there are still theaters, and let me be clear, the theaters are open in brackets.
Yes.
There's not a lot of big stuff happening. And, like if you released your Kong versus Godzilla, it might do okay. It's not going to do as good as it would if there was no pandemic. And that's the thing. They've invested, I don't know, $180 million in that movie, not including the marketing cost. Plus your theaters take a cut when you release it. That's like, what, $250, $300 million you got to make back to make money, or it's a failure.
That's the big problem, is all of these are huge productions. These are huge productions from huge studios and big directors. And again, like you said, the biggest concern right now is not only is it about the studios, all the people who worked on them, everything about that credit scroll at the end of each of these movies are sitting on their hands like, we need to find out if this is going to get us paid. Yeah. Like these are small businesses. These movies are.
Yeah. I always love pointing this out. The VFX company that did work for Life of Pi and won an Academy Award went bankrupt. Like the companies rise and fall based on this stuff.
Yeah.
So when he's like, now first of all, we're working for the worst streaming service. I don't know if HBO Max is the worst streaming service.
It also hasn't been around long enough.
Yeah, and I think like if I had to choose between like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and HBO Max,
I'd say HBO Max is kind of one of the better ones.
Yeah, like Hulu is fine, but there's not many things on there that I religiously watch. Maybe like The Orville or some sitcom I like or whatever. And like Disney Plus, I just watched for Mando. Sorry, Disney people. I know you don't like when I hear that, but it's true.
I mean, yeah, that's.
But what do you have on HBO Max? You have Rick and Morty and Game of Thrones and all this DC stuff.
You have all the Miyazaki movies.
All the Miyazaki movies.
You're getting more things every day.
And now,
my question is like, is he concerned about like the display effect? Like, I know he's big into like the purity of a cinematic viewpoint. Is he worried that if we
throw these things on TV, that it'll never go back to theaters? I don't believe that.
Well, they already said they're going to release them in theaters anyway.
Yeah, they're being released concurrently. And even if there were a lot of theaters open, which they're not, all the Regal cinemas, from what I understand, are still shut down.
Yeah,
so there's a huge section.
Regal's open at all.
And not to mention AMC is slowly going bankrupt. Like if you were
which is a disaster. I get that. It sucks.
Yes, people are losing their jobs,
and it means that movie stuff is like theaters were already in a bad way, and then this was a huge like sucker punch to them as well.
Yeah, a kneecap. And look, like people's job. And look, if we're gonna I don't want to get overly political. The government should step in and do something about the people who are about to be horrifically unemployed through this pandemic. Yeah. They should have been doing it all along, but we had a dipshit in office. Don't want to get too political.
Surrounded by other people who were okay with his dipshittery, and screwing us over by not giving us stimulus checks.
Yes, but here's the thing. Like we're not gonna magically go into where like our theaters are just gonna open up again, and this I think he has a fantasy where like we would release Kong versus Godzilla and it would save the movie industry. No movie is that powerful.
No,
even
if it's the only game in town.
Even if it was like an Avatar or a Star Wars or something that just made buku bucks.
Especially Star Wars. Now that Star Wars has made diminishing returns over the last several years.
I don't think there's anything that's gonna do it. What it's gonna take is just everyone being careful. And slowly getting back to it. And I think Warner Brothers is making a calculated risk here. Do we risk sitting on these movies and letting their value and interest diminish? You can't keep putting out trailers for something until people are like, I'm not interested anymore.
Right.
Wonder Woman 84 came this close for me because like I saw one trailer and then it was like a year of nothing. And I was like, I'm kind of, and then, you know what? They said, we're releasing it on Christmas. Here's a new trailer. And you know what? It got me interested again. So it's not impossible to keep people's excitement up, but a movie like Dune getting delayed a year or something, no,
that's like a bad move.
Yeah,
like, or it's it would be an unfortunate move for. And to be fair to the all the multi-billion-dollar production companies, they've never dealt with anything like this in the history of cinema.
Yes,
where
this is why
there's been no major pandemic like this since the birth of movies.
Yeah, since since like pre-World War II. Or whatever.
like polio, but polio didn't take.
And look, a lot of these production companies are not busy right now. They're literally like, wait, like we can't move till a pandemic has been lifted. We can't do big shoots for big movies. You can do a small indie movie probably, but that's not going to save cinema. This whole thing is why we got a Zack Snyder's Justice League. They had a thing that was mostly done, just sitting on the shelf. Like, let's finish that up and put it out. So like, for me, sitting on these movies is a lose-lose. And Warner Brothers was like, here's what we can do. We can take all these movies and we can schedule them on release dates, maybe one a month or something like that. And because of that, you have to subscribe to HBO Max, and you get about a year's worth of subscriptions at, I don't know, $14 a month. Multiply that by however many million people do it. That's a good chunk of change coming back to keep your studio alive and fund future projects, which Christopher Nolan, I imagine, is worried about future projects.
Yeah.
That's the only conceivable answer I can see here.
And I imagine the trauma for him on releasing Tenet when it happened was, I think Tenet was not just the last movie we saw in theaters, but in the middle of the time where we shouldn't have been seeing it in theaters.
Yeah, probably.
But
look, there was no one in theaters when we saw it.
To be fair, our situation was perfect, was no one was there.
Yeah.
But he, I'm sure that bothered him. Like he's like, I just released this movie and literally,
and now we're reneging or whatever.
It's the worst time to release a movie. Period.
It is what it is. I mean, there is no way around like what he's concerned about, and I don't think there's an easy fix. And also the part where he talks from the viewpoint of like a stock investor, I was like, not really the people that you should be concerned about,
right?
In this thing, like the people who work at movie theaters and like content creators and screenwriters and visual effects people, and
this is very
those are the people that are more affected than like an investor on Warner Brothers board.
Because for any of these filmmakers, like as long as their movies are elsewhere and active, they're still getting those checks. They're still getting those residuals. Those are never going to end. So are the people involved working on them, but those people have to keep working.
Yeah,
because there's a pyramid sliding scale of distribution of that wealth that comes from advertisement and replay value, essentially, for films and TV shows and things in media in general.
Yeah. I think it's a little too early to say if it's going to be a success or a failure. My instincts say that, and look, there is no version where this year where some movie studio would come out and be like, we actually did better than last year.
No, that's impossible.
You're losing a huge market share already.
Yeah.
So I think Warner Brothers is like, we're taking the best option here. And I think it is the best option. I don't think we're going to lose theaters forever or something like that. And like,
it is a concern that I have, and it's a concern that I share.
If you do lose them, it's not because of this.
No.
It'll be because of the larger environment in general.
Right, but this didn't help whatsoever.
Maybe, but they are still releasing in theaters. If you want, like, I plan on going to see Wonder Woman 84 in theaters. Yeah, you can come with me if you want. Or we can watch it at HBO Max at my house for free.
Because we'll have the option for that.
But I plan on, I'm a big person, like, when I see content I like, I support it. I put my money where my mouth is.
I'm a simple man. I like it. I support it.
Yeah, something like that. But, much ado about nothing, in my opinion. Anything you want to say, or you want to move on to, we have two more things.
It recalls to me also the oftentimes conspiratorial fear that some people have about, as everything becomes digitized, as everything becomes streamable, not just film, but television, music, and everything, the need to collect original physical copies becomes necessary because we have the ability to completely now make things vanish. But I don't think it is from the conspiracy, like they're trying to get rid of Gone with the Wind. It's like, no, what's happening is like a fire could break out at a movie studio and destroy every print of something immediately, and you can no longer get masters of it.
Yeah.
And or you lose the rights, and the rights become caught in a boondoggle.
This is the problem. This is not a problem unique to movies. This is technology in general.
Yeah, definitely music. Definitely music.
And our life is made, frankly, like the net benefits versus the net negatives. Like the net benefits outweigh them.
Mm-hmm. I think right now, I mean, because I don't fully.
I have 2 hard drives like right there, just full of like my masters and sample libraries. Like, I don't know, 5 years ago, getting a terabyte hard drive was like an ordeal. Mm-hmm. You like special order it. Now you can just buy them on anywhere.
Yeah, they just give them away.
In a few years, like 8K TVs will be the standard. Like,
yeah. I guess wrapping up, I don't fully understand where Nolan's coming from, and maybe it's because I'm not a millionaire filmmaker who thinks in terms of these things, or obviously context will be needed. Right now I think that Warner Brothers is doing
Christopher Nolan
the best thing possible, and we need to see these results, not just for our own entertainment, but for the value and benefit of those who put all that work into them before this disaster took place.
Yeah. And also, not to poo-poo it, but like entertainment. People are stuck at home.
Yeah.
And like, frankly, they could use some distraction. And I think, not to downplay anyone's mental health, like movies are a great way to occupy you for a night and to spend time with your family or whatever. So let's talk about Metal Gear Solid.
Let's talk about Metal Gear Solid.
I knew that'll get you pepped up.
All right. So speaking
Oscar
of
Isaac is
Isaac is
Plissken.
playing,
not Snake Plissken. Solid Snake.
Solid Snake.
He calls himself Pliskin in Metal Gear 2, which is like a funny...
Iroquois Pliskin, junior grade.
Which is a reference to Escape from New York?
Yeah, Escape from New York. Iroquois Pliskin, Lieutenant Junior Grade.
That's a great David Hayter impression.
I've got it down. So Jordan Voight Roberts has been super stoked.
Who did Kong Skull Island, which I liked.
And he has been giddy about this project for a while. There was a month where he put out his own hand-drawn, or at least digitally drawn, concept art from which you
told me about this.
Yeah,
I did it on a stream.
Yeah, I had mistakenly thought that it was concept art for the movie. It was actually all just moments from all the Metal Gear games that he loved. So he is a devout fan of this franchise. He gets it. I've heard him do interviews where he talks about one thing that can't be undone about Metal Gear, what Metal Gear makes different from everything else, from like Mission Impossible or James Bond or Saving Private Ryan.
Conspiracy stories.
And also it's surreal military. It's surreal action. It's also like absurdist and dreamlike and science fiction-y.
Maybe demons and vampire people.
Yeah, it's also becomes horror a little bit. And he's met with Kojima. Kojima's seemed like a very nice guy. He clearly makes a lot of friends in Hollywood because he's a big movie nerd.
Yeah.
And he likes Voight Roberts. He's given him his points up. So everyone's been sitting around being like, well, who are they going to get to play the man, to play Solid Snake? Yeah. And apparently it's going to be Oscar Isaac. What do you think about that? Because I don't know your relationship with Metal Gear as much as mine.
I played the first 2 games. I played the first 3 games. I really like them.
And by that you mean solid. You played Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater.
Snake Eater, yeah. Where you are Big Boss.
Yes.
Which is
or
great.
Naked Snake.
Yeah, and I really like those games. I've always thought they are very cinematic, and they would lend themselves well. I would just love to see Vamp in a fight sequence with with Oscar Isaac, because that's such a cool character, voiced by the great Phil LaMarr, who does everyone from Static Shock to Hermes on Futurama and stuff.
He's one of our great voice actors.
Yeah, he's great. He'll forever be John Stewart from Justice League.
He was a
that
great,
big soldierly voice. Like he's great.
So solid.
And I remember playing Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 and being like, these games are very epic in scope. They would serve themselves very well with a great big budget director. You got to nail that tone, the tone of conspiracies and mutant men
and also what its themes are related to
nationalism
and technology and genes and memes now as well, and corruption and betrayal.
I think my biggest worry is that's a lot to take on your first swing.
Yeah.
I think a focused, self-contained story, or self-contained, I don't know if he's necessarily adapting the games or being like, these are, or if he's going to straight up be like, just do the games, or if he's going to be like, this is a loose adaptation of Metal Gear formatted for a movie.
I feel like from what things he has said, this is going to be Metal Gear Solid. The original.
So
however,
so we would see Metal Gear Rex and stuff.
Right. However, I also get an idea from listening to interviews with him where he's like, this may be something where I bring in the meta aspects of it, like even jumping time, jumping location, things like that, kind of having fun with that. Because I think he's somebody, meaning Jordan Vogt-Roberts, at least I hope, I'm being very optimistic to him because he's shown his fanboy card. Therefore, we are allowed to be happy that it's somebody who cares about the material.
But
he's also a filmmaker who's trying to get a movie made and make money off of it.
Yes,
I get that.
And also, fans don't always make the best movies.
Right.
I will point you to Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
Made by a guy who loves Dungeons and Dragons. And look, he's talked at length about like he wasn't ready to make a movie, but other people were going to come in and make it, and he thought it would have been just a disaster because they didn't get it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
What a horrible
Solomon.
irony.
Yeah.
But
he meant well, is what I'll say. It's a terrible movie. I do not see Jordan Vogt-Roberts in the same light. Mm-hmm. He is at least a competent filmmaker. He's a little untested. He's got 2 movies under his belt. And
one is a pretty solid action movie.
The
thriller.
other is could have been a student film,
right?
For all we know, that was done on like $10 grand or whatever.
So
but both of them were well received. I have some faith in this, but video game adaptations are notorious for being not necessarily hard to adapt, but they have stink on them, and I think they carry
even the
stink.
best among them are still meddling at best.
Yeah, and they carry some stink with them into the theater sometimes.
Well,
I've talked about Assassin's Creed and how I think that movie showed me what it would look like if you took. And it's a flimsy script, but if you took it seriously, there's a great scene I talked about with.
I love the games.
I think it's all right.
It's interesting.
It falls apart and it doesn't feel. In Assassin's Creed, there's a great scene between Michael Fassbender and Brendan Gleeson, and I remember being very awestruck by how good it was. And it's just Brendan Gleeson plays his father in the movie, and his father killed his mother to protect her from the Templars, essentially, like a merciful suicide or whatever. And there's a part, and the movie was made by Justin Kurzel, who did Macbeth.
He did that really great
which
Macbeth
is really good
with Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, and his brother Jed Kurzel does the music for the thing. And there's this great scene where Michael Fassbender just looks him in the eye and like tears come down his face and be like, "I'm gonna destroy this creed, and I'm gonna like." And it's like this really weird relationship with a father he never had, where he talks about how angry he is and how he puts his knife up to his throat and I remember thinking like, in the hands of a worse director, in the hands of a worse screenwriter, in the hands of worse actors, this scene would be generic and be like, we need a conflict here of some sort.
We need to make some humanity.
For a second, and then for a second, I was taken above this average movie and was like, that's actually really good. And the music does a lot of heavy lifting. And then at the very end of the movie, all the assassins, all 3 of them. There's Michael K. Williams is one of them. There's 2 other ones. One's a bow lady, and then one's like a French. There's like a French rapier warrior, and they get free and they fight all the members of Abstergo in like a cool Animus room. And then when they win, Michael Fassbender has a vision from the Animus or whatever where he sees the rest of the assassins. You see Ezio for a second.
Ooh.
You don't see him, but you see his silhouette or whatever. Like, oh, that's Ezio. That's Altair. That's whoever the fuck.
Right. Those are the ones from all the other games.
It's not a great movie.
Right.
It comes close. I say it's not a good movie. It comes close a couple of times. The best video game movie for me still is probably Warcraft. Because at least it knows what it is, it nails what it is, and if you don't like it, it's kind of it's your what you want, like personally want to see. But for a World of Warcraft game, I kind of think, or for a movie,
just for Warcraft, in general,
I think it's as good as you can get. The orc characters are quite interesting, and Toby Kebbell gives it his all.
Right,
like I want this movie to be like great because those games are great.
Yeah, it's a source material that's very generous. However, I think in the end, the problem with a lot of adapting video games into film is that narratively, immersion is so important. You are playing the battles. You are making the action happen. You are choosing where the characters go.
Yeah.
And then the plot happens to you. That is a different effect than, like, like that's probably the thing I think about as well as how are we going to do these like battle sequences to make them any more interesting or memorable or exciting than every single person's individual response to the first time they did it. I think that's the expectation that things are living up to, and that's impossible to make.
I think you just have to make good action sequences.
Yeah, you just have to be
that
clever.
That make sense, but that also work in like in a cinematic setting. Mm-hmm. Like anyone could look at like John Wick's movies could be video games. Because that's what for everyone who is listening, we're talking about John Wick today.
Right.
I didn't do that at the beginning. I should have. But
we'll throw in a little.
Those movies could easily be adaptations of any number of video games.
Right.
If you give me some great action sequences, same thing for like my expectations from the Batman movie. I was like, you can give me all the atmosphere and the cool dark broodingness. What you have to sell me on is action, because people come to these movies to see action, and you can throw. And I think the best thing to do is like you build a great fight sequence or series of shootouts or whatever, but you have to ground it in stuff that we like from the games. For example, how many times when you were playing did you walk up behind a guy like freeze and then you're like, oh
yeah,
like one of those would be fine. Some stealth camo, his like make him go invisible, lean into the technology aspect of it all, like that. I think all those things would be fine.
Yeah, and much like you were talking about, and we'll get to talking about with John Wick, I would never want to play a John Wick game because it could never be as good as the choreography. I don't know. Maybe we're getting there. Cyberpunk 2070 looks really slick, but I know our gameplay has not gotten that good yet, unless it's like a VR situation where I'm allowed to do like kung fu and like breakdance.
But Snake Eater has the CQC. Did you ever learn how to do that?
Like in real life?
No, like in the game, you can make tactical
close quarters combat.
Yeah, you can make tactical fight decisions, and each one is a different grapple or a different. That I think could work really easy. And also, how much does Snake spend his time having a John Wick shootout against 50 dudes? Not really.
Not really.
He's a stealth guy.
I mean, there is the one where him and Meryl are in the elevator, and then all those guys come in. You have to shoot them all.
Yeah.
But mostly it's the boss battles that matter. It's Psycho Mantis. It's Sniper Wolf. It's Vulcan Raven, and then eventually it's Liquid Snake and the actual machine.
Yeah, and you got to get into the.
Because Oscar Isaac has been confirmed to play Solid Snake. He's not playing Big Boss. He's not playing Naked Snake.
But he would play. Those characters are clones of him.
Right. I think only Big Boss would obviously be one where it's like you could get someone different.
Yeah.
Or Solidus because he's older.
Yeah.
But.
And I think that for me, here's another weird thing about that. Like, look, Metal Gear Solid came out, and then we didn't know all this backstory. And then as these games came out, we got the backstory. Mm-hmm. But now the movie's being made later, and we know the backstory.
Right.
So are people going to go into this movie being like, are they going to make references to Big Boss? Are they going to make references to, Sons of Liberty and like what happens with what's going to come after this? Are they going to be like... He's got to be careful. If you get too carried away with the lore, people who know nothing about it are going to be like,
really,
what's going on?
Really turned off.
Yeah.
And that's again.
Approach it like approach it like they did the first time you played the game. Like you don't know anything. Like when you're playing Metal Gear, you don't realize there's clones and stuff till later in the game. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big revelation. That revelation has to be hit dramatically by actors in the movie.
Yeah. And
it has to feel
the twists and things that happen in Metal Gear Solid are so outlandish and bonkers and over the top, but it works because
of the
tone. Ding, 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 ding.
We're going to come back to that word, tone.
Yes. Going back to that tone.
Yeah. I think that it is possible this movie could be a big whiff. He seems to like it, but also Jordan Vogt Roberts, I don't know if he's a screenwriter. Who's writing the script?
Yeah.
Are the producers going to interfere and be like, fans like gun fu, like John Wick. Put a lot of that in there. Like, there's plenty of producers who.
The thing is, I can see Snake doing that too.
Yes,
I can also see that.
If it becomes John Wick, it's no longer
not
Snake.
Solid Snake.
Solid Snake is get in, get out kind of thing.
Right, but he's also a guy who's tormented. Like he's like, man, I'm just a regular soldier brought in to do some wet work, but he's also a legend.
Yeah.
Like
whatever happens to Solid Snake?
Metal Gear Solid 4, he gets old. The effects of fox dye on him that cause his brother Liquid Snake to die causes him to age dramatically. And
doesn't he go to like Panama or Nicaragua?
That's Big Boss.
Which one am I? So where does he go then?
So after Metal Gear Solid 2, he spends the next several years I don't know exactly because I can't remember the time difference between Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 4. But by Metal Gear Solid 4, he's in his 40s, but he's aged to a man in his 70s. And so he's now working with.
It seems like something you could write out.
Well, you don't need to. You don't
scribble that out.
Well, that's also 2 movies later. You don't need to do all that.
Yeah.
This is all going to be set.
When does he learn that? Like, when do we learn about what is it called? Fox die?
It's at the end of Metal Gear Solid 1.
That he has an aging agent inside of him?
You don't know that until Metal Gear Solid 4. But what
is Fox die then? Is that
the twist in Metal Gear Solid 1 is he thinks.
It's been so long since I played this. Keep in mind.
He thinks Solid Snake thinks that he's in there to capture the Metal Gear and stop save. He's there to rescue the DARPA chief. He's there to rescue the arms tech president, and he's there to stop
Metal Gear Rex.
Stop the nuclear launch. Yeah. All of this is a shell operation that Dr. Naomi, one of your subordinates, one of the people working with you, has a personal vendetta against these people. So anytime you show up, they die suddenly. So when you show up and meet the DARPA chief, he suddenly has a heart attack and dies. And Big Boss and Solid Snake's like, what's going on? And everybody's like, we don't get it. We don't know what's going on. Something weird's happening. Later in the game, towards the end, you find out that Solid Snake has been sent in as essentially as a sick animal.
Yeah.
To spread fox die into it's a disease or it's a pathogen.
I remember this. Yes.
That affects the genome soldiers and those affected by the genomes and causes them. It's kind of like the contingency in Jurassic Park in the original book, where it's like, oh, if we release this pathogen, all the dinosaurs will die. It's our failsafe. So he thinks he's sent in to do wet work. He is actually manipulated to sent in to assassinate all these people and die himself for the cause of the Patriots and all the conspiracy. I ain't gonna get into all that. That'll be a whole podcast talk about the fucking Patriots. So at the end, when he fights Liquid dies not by Snake's gun, but from fox die.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Naomi, who's like, I did it. I'm the one who gave you the fox die. I had you sent in as a contingency to make sure that all these people would die.
But he doesn't know that it's going to age him till...
Yeah, we don't find that out. Because essentially it's like, you will die one day. It will kill you. We just don't know when because it affects your body differently because of your genes. So now go and live your life, essentially, is that.
Go fuck yourself, first of all, is what I would say.
Yeah. Well, that's why by Metal Gear Solid 2.
That's something you got to be careful with.
Right.
You explained it very well. In a movie, that's going to be confusing.
Right. So which is why I don't think... Depending on
and
how
then you have Liquid's arm is attached to another man.
Oh, you want to get into that?
Like we got to get to that has to happen in the movie too.
Liquid's arm gets put onto Ocelot's arm, where you think he's possessed by the spirit of Ocelot.
Here we go.
He's not, however.
He's been psychologically programmed to think that he is
by himself.
By himself. Yes,
he psychologically convinced himself by hypnotism that he is in order to triple betray the Patriots, but in order to know that, you have to go back to when he was Adamska, the officer, the GRU officer working for Spetsnaz when he was a young man in his 20s.
And Snake Eater, yeah, that's super convoluted.
I don't know if they'll even get that far.
There are I mean.
Because
I pray they do.
Also, forget all that. It's very possible Jordan Voight Roberts will go back and just do Metal Gear, the original game, because that's where Solid Snake was introduced when he dropped off into Outer Heaven.
What is Metal Gear? Well, I thought Metal Gear Solid is the first game.
No, Metal Gear is the first game. Came out for the Famicom. Came out for the NES.
When is that? Way back when?
That came back in '87. The first Metal Gear game was in 1987.
There's no way. People want Metal Gear Solid.
They'll want Metal Gear Solid.
You're casting Solid Snake. That's what people want to see.
Yeah, but that's where Solid Snake first interviewed, and that's where Big Boss came from. Big Boss has always been there, because Big Boss was Solid Snake's guy he was talking to in the first game before there was all the voice acting and everything. It's just like, hi, I'm Big Boss, you're working for me now. Yeah. And so he goes and finds out that, oh, Big Boss is actually behind everything and I'm being manipulated.
Or he could do the smarter thing to do, and it'll also probably
Metal Gear Solid.
well, it also probably piss people off, is after you do your Metal Gear movie, write your own version of what comes next.
Sure.
Streamline. It'll piss some people off who don't want the triple ocelot reveal or whatever. But it probably streamline it as a movie.
Right.
Much better.
But what do you think about Oscar Isaac in this situation?
I think he looks great.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that I see, they post a picture of him from like Dune or whatever. And I'm imagining him like with no beard, like with the headband and like the tactical gear.
My worry is that he was too old for the role.
No, I think he's.
But
just
I think
right.
that's fine. His voice is going to be interesting because we've all been so inundated with David Hayter's gruff voice.
David Hayter is also a great screenwriter
and a good actor.
He wrote X-Men 2. He was in Guyver 2 way back in the day.
He wrote Watchmen.
He was one of the screenwriters on Watchmen. He should consult on this movie or whatever. But David Hayter would be.
Well, he's synonymous with that.
Yeah, like we expect that voice, Ocelot.
But Oscar Isaac doesn't have that voice. He's got that voice like this, where it's a little bit,
where's my droid?
Yeah.
You
talk or I talk. What do you want me to talk about?
He's also
Llewellyn Davis.
He's also He's also an actor.
Yeah.
So he could.
And he likes. And as an interview that's come out recently from 2019, from last year. I forgot what movie it was for, but he's with the group. He's being interviewed. He's got the big beard and everything. And the interviewer's like talking about video games, and Oscar Isaac pops up and said, "Metal Gear Solid, love that stuff. That's my favorite." And they're like, "Well, who would you want to play?" Snake, man. Got his wish.
Do you think he knew something,
No,
and they were just
so.
in the? Okay,
I don't think so.
enough.
I think this was pretty new. I think they
also
negotiations
in Drive. He plays a very kind of deep voiced, soft spoken
Standard's
criminal.
pretty
So he
scary.
can. I think I have faith in his abilities. Yeah. The bigger X factor is what's the story, what's the script, and
who else
is
going to be cast? Because the big things is who's going to be Liquid, who's going to be Ocelot, who's going to be Otacon, who's going to be Meryl. If they even do that story, everyone else just kind of whatever. But
who would you cast as? Let's do a quick 2 minutes, quick rundown. Who'd you cast as I don't know, Liquid.
Liquid, either I could see like Nicholas Hoult or something like that. Nicholas Hoult or Michael Fassbender.
What about
Fassbender's a little too old, but
Michael Fassbender might be too old.
Yeah.
What about because Liquid is supposed to be the younger, isn't he?
They're both about the same age.
They're both about the same age. But I think it's because he's liquid, and liquid is less dense than solid, so I assume he's weaker. Or
but
younger.
Also, Liquid is grand and theatrical, and it's not just Cam Clark's performance as him, but that's his character. He's extroverted. He's charismatic.
You know who might be cool? Wyatt Russell.
Wyatt Russell might be good. I'd be okay with that. I don't know if he could do it. He just needs to be present. I see a British theatrical actor playing. That's why Nicholas Hoult came to mind.
That's probably
but
fair.
Nicholas Hoult could also play Ocelot.
Nicholas Hoult will be a great Ocelot, but I feel bad for him because he always plays like the nerd, like the guy behind the computer. So he wanted to be Batman. Like he wants to do some actiony stuff.
So he's one of my favorite.
Cast him as one of the bad guys. Yeah, cast him as Sniper Wolf or whatever.
Sniper Wolf has to be a woman.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding. I don't remember any of the bad guys in that game. I remember the
everyone knows Psycho
I remember Vulcan.
Yeah, Vulcan Raven.
But
it's also
so who would you cast as?
Colonel Campbell. You got to get Colonel Campbell in there.
Who'd you cast as Colonel Campbell?
Why not Cranston? Why not Bryan Cranston?
That'd be pretty good.
Cranman would do fine in that.
Or like Richard Jenkins.
Richard Jenkins would be great.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Okay, Richard Jenkins is a solid choice.
But Ocelot.
Oh, that's tough. That's really tough.
How does he look in? I'm trying to imagine him. Like, and by the time we meet him in Snake Eater, which is 60s, he's buzz cut, handsome, looks like a member of the Nazi
He looks like
party.
Nicholas Hoult.
he looks like a Nazi.
But which is ironic because he's actually
he's a Soviet.
Spetsnaz. He's literally Russian. Yeah. He's also a double agent, but still.
Or a triple, quadruple psyop
right.
agent.
He's working for the Americans related to other people anyway. But when he's in Metal Gear Solid, he's an old man.
He looks kind of like he does in.
60s.
He looks like he does in 2. He's got the long hair.
He's got the long white
the
hair and the mustache. He's got the cowboy outfit. And when he talks like this. He's spinning that revolver around and everything. I love reloading.
I'm trying not to go off the mannerisms of the voice actors, rather like who has the presence of the original character.
Right, but that voice performance says a lot about the character.
Yeah, because you have to differentiate it from
rough. He's weaselly.
Yeah, and you have to differentiate him from when Liquid takes over,
right?
And he becomes Shakespearean or whatever.
Right. He becomes. Neeson comes to mind, but I think Neeson's too kind looking. He needs to be kind of more cruel.
He's got kind grandfather eyes.
If it was 10 years ago, Ian McShane, but McShane's way too old now.
Maybe. I'm trying to think. There's got to be some good ones in there. I'm trying to think. I think of one.
Who's starting to age. Ooh, what about Pierce Brosnan?
I'm trying to think.
Well, he can't do. Well, Ocelot's accent doesn't really matter.
I saw Brosnan recently in that Jackie Chan movie, The Foreigner. I watched it on a whim. It's really good.
I heard it's good.
I don't know if he's got the weaseliness. He's either because in that movie he's like a former IRA guy who works with the British government to keep terrorism on to keep it contained.
Right, but he also was involved in a bomb that went off and killed Jackie Chan's family, and Jackie Chan's out for revenge.
I don't know if I could see him as that. You know who I think might be who I think could do Weasley, but also can be kind of intimidating. I can't remember the actor's name. He's in Justice League and he's in Game of Thrones. Roose Bolton.
Oh, Steven.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
He'd be good.
He'd be good. He'd be okay. I mean, on that note, no, he's too. Charles Dance would be somebody that'd be fun.
No, I take it back. Charles Dance. That's a great casting.
Charles Dance might be fun. I think we need somebody.
He can't do, or maybe,
tough.
Yeah. I was.
He's tough. That's a tough.
I would say I think Charles Dance could do it though. I know we always see him as he's just forever Tywin Lannister.
Well, he's very paternal.
But now I feel like if you gave him the opportunity, he could be. And you got to be but Ocelot, for all his weaseliness, is like a lethal killer.
Yeah, he's
who can bounce bullets off of stuff and kill you.
Yeah.
So
that's why he's second in command. Also because he helped raise Liquid and all that. But that's all backstory you won't know until later. But
that's a good one. Anyone else? Odegon? Did we do Odegon? I said with Nicholas Hoult.
We also don't want to I guess not totally. Well, the thing is also you have to match ethnicities, and so far everybody is white.
Yeah.
You only get to characters like Mei Lin, who is most certainly Chinese, and
But it's
Raven
hard
is
though because
Inuit.
Kojima made this. He's a Japanese man. It's a Japanese production, but loves Western stuff and American history. So you kind of have to make him white, or it doesn't work. Or you can make him black.
You can change things up
Yeah.
any way you want, but it's all about the kind of characters and the kind of thing. Meryl's a tough call. I mean, I guess you could get someone like, I don't know, Anna Taylor-Joy's doing really great, and she's got that red hair from Queen's Gambit.
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't played a lot of chess.
I really want to check it out.
I never know how to say it. Ewan Rayan. Yeah, might be a good Odegon.
He could be. He needs to be a little less villainous.
I think I've seen him.
I love that guy, by the way. I want to see him in more things.
I saw him in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. He can be. It's not a good movie. He can be charming. Yeah. He can do other stuff.
It's just that Ramsey performance is so good.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah.
And then everybody else is just kind of what have you.
All right. I'll tell you what. Let's move on. Where are we at time? We should probably get into our main thing.
Yeah. Anything?
We had Sean Connery, and there was some Zack Snyder stuff, but we can save that for next time.
We can save that for next time. We did bring up the Spider-Man thing, but there's really not much to talk about other than Alfred Molina is coming back to play Dr. Octavius.
Have we talked about that during the stream? We talked about that for a second.
We talked about it for a second because I saw that Maguire and Garfield and everyone else are coming back to start Spider-Versing for part 3.
I think we talked about it as much as we should.
Yeah, there's not much else to say.
Let's talk about.
Yeah, I got nothing else at the moment.
Let's talk about John Wick.
So let's talk about John Wick.
Let's talk about our main story tonight. This just in, John Wick 3 Parabolum. I thought a parabolum was something different than what it is.
Yeah.
I thought a parabolum was like the oval, but that's a parabola.
That's a parabola. It wasn't until Ian McShane actually says the Latin towards the end
prepare
of that.
For war.
Parabellum. In order for peace, prepare for war. Or in order to have peace, prepare for war.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Obviously, in lieu of not a lot of material out there right now.
Do you want to give your thoughts on the first two? Like, what are your opinions on John Wick as a franchise?
The way I'm going to frame this is my opinion on the first one, and then 2 and 3 kind of together. Because my argument for this is that these two movies might as well be the same movie. John Wick, the first one, it's been a very long time since I've seen the original. But John Wick is almost exactly where a lot of action movies needed to go. Way more grounded while also being hyper stylized,
but also hyper self-aware. It knows what it is, and it knows what you don't care about.
Yeah, the self-awareness drops off, I think, and we'll talk about that in my issues with these later two when it becomes so in love with its own lore.
Let me make a predict. I was just about to say, I make a prediction. Like, are you going to say that as the backstory starts to fade in, it becomes less self-aware and a little more either silly or confusing?
Self-serious, not silly enough. where the we'll get to it. We'll get to it. I want you start off talking a little bit about. I think you might have some opinions on the series more than
all in all. I really like these movies because I see them as I think the way Keanu Reeves and Chad Stahelski see them. Chad Stahelski did the. I think he's done 2 of these. He did the he did the last one. I think he did 2. And I think someone else did the first one.
Yeah, created by Derek Kolstad originally, and this is all the way back in 2014.
Yeah, he was the original screenwriter and stuff.
And the first director is Chad Stahelski.
Yeah, he also did. Chad Stahelski. Let me back up. I think Chad Stahelski and David Leitch, I think, were stunt people on the Matrix movies, which is where they met Keanu Reeves, and they discovered his dedication to doing all those stunts himself. And like, what an absolute gem that man is.
Yes, they were like, I really like being this guy.
And they ultimately decided they wanted to make a movie that is a love letter to stunt people.
Yes, and what these are made by stunt people. Apparently, Stahelski was the double for Brendan Lee during The Crow, and so obviously was very close to when that traumatic event happened when Lee was killed.
Yeah, I think Chad Stahelski was also like there's Zack Snyder posted a picture of him as a guy in 300. So he was a hardcore stunt coordinator and stunt double for a long time.
And it's definitely a striving thing of like, hey, stunt people probably need an Oscar category because they're the backbone of why so many of these things work.
Yeah, the amount of people that do their own stunts is very rare. And
you don't get a lot of Tom Cruises.
Yeah. And Tom Cruise is a lunatic where every time he does it, I think he's just trying to kill himself. Like
he's just trying to maybe this Mission Impossible will do it.
But I think that Chad Stahelski, I think they got together. They wanted to make a movie, relatively low budget. And just sort of have fun with action movie tropes and make some really great practical fight scenes, very low VFX.
And I have to imagine they were very inspired because of the involvement in third movie of the guys from The Raid.
Yeah, or one of the guys from The Raid. Yeah. I don't know who the other one is, but the guy with the kind of fizzy ponytail.
Yeah, the two Indonesian.
He plays Mad Dog in the first Raid and a homeless man or whatever in the second.
The second one, but I think they saw.
And he's also in Star Wars: The Force Awakens for 5 seconds.
Oh, is he the?
Welcome to Concha Club. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's really great. They wanted to create these movies, and that is sort of how I watch these movies. They're trying to just love letters to great action cinema, whether they're car chases, gunplay, fight sequences, choreography. It gets so. I think this last movie did a really great job at not letting itself get too carried away with. It is still very stylized, but over the course of these movies, I'll talk more about this later. The gun stuff gets more boring. The hand-to-hand stuff gets much more interesting by necessity.
And by the last part of it, that there's an escalation that happens in terms of how the enemies go up against gunplay that requires both to become important. And I thought that was clever.
Yeah, and I think that you can only watch Keanu Reeves do a headshot enough times till you're like, I get it. Like they're still interesting, but after a while you get very exhausted with that. The hand-to-hand stuff and the stunt set pieces, like there's a sequence in this movie where he uses a horse to fight someone. Essentially, pretty good.
Yeah.
Halle Berry has some trained dogs. Cool. I felt a little upset because I was like, those puppers should be off in a field somewhere having fun, not being trained to be murder machines. But
they do get body armor.
I digress.
So.
Yeah. So that's my opinion on these movies. I like them all to varying degrees. The first one has a little leg up in mystery.
Yeah.
When we first meet John Wick, I'm like, is this a romance movie? Like, we know it's not because like we see the poster, he's got a gun or whatever.
Right.
But like when I first saw the movie, I was like, there's this interesting cinematography and sound and performance from Keanu Reeves. Like, who is this guy? He's taking the shower. You see his tattoos. Michael Nyqvist. I never know.
Michael Nyqvist, who is
he calls him and he goes, I've heard about your wife, John. My condolences. I understand that my son is transgressed. And Keanu Reeves is just sitting there, like in shadows or whatever. You see the back of his head holding the phone up. And he goes, now, John, let us not return to our baser instincts. And I was like, what's going on? It has this great air of mystery to it.
It's very almost. when I say noir, I don't mean standard noir. I mean more like hard-boiled, like Frank Miller noir.
Neo-noir meets like, what's that John Woo movie that with the hallway shootouts and stuff? What's it called? The old
Hard-boiled?
Is that it?
The one with Chow Yun-fat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Hard-boiled and...
That's exactly, you're right.
A hard-boiled and there's a... Keep going, I'll find the other one.
It takes from those old Hong Kong action pieces from back in the day.
And samurai film. And there's something about these movies I'll bring up that
and like
involves
neo-noir
a lot of love of kind of an Orientalism.
Yeah,
but I'll get to that.
And there's some neo-noir and there's some comic book tropes in there as well.
Very much
like
so.
It's kind of a what's the word?
Pastiche?
No, I was gonna say like a buffet or like a dealer's choice of action cinema. Like whatever you like, there's probably something in there for you. And if you don't like the other stuff, it's still pretty good and will keep you entertained until you get to the stuff you do like. I like all these movies to varying degrees, but I'll get into more of my details on the second two when we start talking about them.
Yeah, hard-boiled.
Yeah.
Yeah, hard-boiled and bullet in the head.
Yeah.
The killer, the Chow Yun-fat Hong Kong beginning of the beginning of where they mix martial arts with gun kata, the beginning of gun kata that kind of then cult hits up with Equilibrium as a cult film, and then you get The Matrix where you get a little bit more of that, and then this is kind of the culmination of a lot of that. I find John Wick, the first one, to be interesting because the big thing from it is the line where he's like, "Oh yeah, I think I'm back," and that is not just for this character. There's a lot of
Reeves,
this is Keanu Reeves as well. Like he had been.
Well, yeah, he obviously wouldn't agree to these movies if he wasn't like on board with like, yeah, I'll do one of these. This is fun.
But it is. These are credited a lot to revitalizing his career after he kind of vanished for a while. And
that's fair
because he had gone from very much similar to John Wick, Baba Yaga. He had been this action star. He had been Neo. This had all been a thing for him.
Speed.
Other
ones.
Point Break. Like he had been an A-lister, and then personal tragedies took place in his life, and his own personal things that he had to deal with. Very much like John Wick, where he thought, "I'm settled and I'm trying to be at peace." And then these tragedies take place in his life and require him to take action.
Yeah.
And I feel like very similar to Keanu Reeves, he's like, I have to take action in this time. Not to read too much into his life, but I think there's some very similarities.
I think it's apropos, though, because I think the directors know that. They love working with him because they've worked with him dozens of times. And they're like, this guy needs a movie where he shows what he can do and why he adds value to Hollywood, which he does, by the way. And he also gives away most of his money from the Matrix
He's also
movie.
the nicest dude in the fucking world. But also, this was a Renaissance movie for Keanu because he had gone from both being an action hero and also the butt of so many unnecessary bad actor jokes.
Yeah, my ex co-host used to always do why. Like that was his thing, and like I don't think Keanu Reeves is a bad actor. No. In fact, I think when he has the right material, he can be really good. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of movies.
He's just very specific.
There's plenty of movies where he's like whoa or whatever. Like,
or you get something like Dracula where he's trying to do a British accent and it don't work.
And someone said something like oh, Keanu Reeves doesn't act; he just asks questions or whatever. And I was like, I don't know that that's true. Like, fuck you.
Again, watch Speed. Yeah. When he finds out,
or Point Break.
Like, but in Speed, like when he hates. There's a great scene in Speed when he finds out that Harry, his buddy, played by
Patrick Swayze.
No, not Patrick Swayze.
The other one.
This is Speed. Jeff Daniels.
Yeah.
Jeff Daniels gets killed, and then he starts losing hope. There's this great moment where he's tried to be the hero. He's trying to be strong, but he's not a superhero. He's more John McClane than anything else. And he just starts laughing to himself. He's like, we're all going to die. And that's when he has a moment of just like being like, wait a minute. But before that, he's given up hope and he sells it where he's just like, done everything I can. We're fucked, Sandra Bullock. And then he realizes like, wait a minute. He can't see you in the camera. And he sells it. Every time he loses his shit in that movie, he sells it where you feel bad for him. Mm-hmm. Where you're like, he's trying his best to keep this going. And if that's not good acting, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves is a gem. And
In the first movie, I will be the first person to admit the acting is whatever. It is a lot of him asking questions, being quiet, one word answers, and then there's the little freak out where he's like, "You can either give me your son or you can die alongside him," and then they put the bag over his head. That's pretty good stuff, I think. And I think as these movies go on and the lore seeps in, it gets a little more. It allows him to do a little more acting. But let's get.
I would say it takes some things away from him, especially in the third.
Let's get into We don't need to go over the first one. Dog kills everybody.
Right.
Gets his revenge.
The dog's a representative of something, and then he loses it and goes on a roaring rampage of revenge against
Let's get
Alfie
to the
Allen.
other two.
Yes.
Yeah.
So John Wick by itself, and very similar to The Matrix, is very self-contained in its own world, in its own logic, and could exist on its own.
Yeah.
When we get into the sequels, much like with Reloaded and Revolutions, you get
our inconsistencies.
Well, not so much inconsistencies as we have to explain everything. And I was talked to one of my roommate earlier today about this. And because do we want to talk about the plot real quick, or we just want to get into it?
Of 2 or 3?
Well, 3, I guess,
Yeah.
because
At
I
the
mean,
end
you
of
really
John
can't
Wick-
talk about 3 without 2.
Well, let's talk about some of the rules because they kind of inform what happens. So there are a bunch of assassins, and these assassins serve something called the table.
The high table.
What that is, we don't know.
Right.
It could literally just be people at a high table and the kids are on the kiddie chairs.
There's an esoteric, powerful, vaguely Yakuza-esque, mystical, not mystical, but mystical in terms of like mythical, the high table. They're the ones that make all the calls, vaguely Illuminati.
And they
kind of
give
thing.
you who your targets are, maybe? And this is what I'm talking about. I think the stories it's either too vague or it's too specific. You got to pick one.
Or just pick none of it. We're not here for it. I think what happens, I'll get to it.
Okay, but I think that like they give you your orders, and John Wick has this mythos that he did. It's talked about in the first movie. He was given an impossible task if he wanted to leave this world behind, which he did because he found a lady that he loved, and he completed this impossible task. And Michael Nyquist, or I never know how to say his name, said. The bodies he buried that night laid the foundation for everything we are, or whatever. And he tells. There's also a lot of great little one-liners in that movie about like John Wick isn't the boogeyman; he's the man you sent to kill the boogeyman.
Right. When people talk about Baba Yaga or Baba Yaga, they tremble in their feet. It's almost like a Kaiser Soze Usual Suspect situation, like what gangsters tell their kids asleep is, hey, you better watch out, Kaiser Soze is coming to get you. Baba Yaga's coming to get you.
Yeah, and at the end, there's these orders seem to be given out and facilitated by a group of hotels around the world, I think.
Continentals.
Called Continentals. I don't know if there's 1 or 1,000. I think there's 1,000.
Yeah.
And each one has a manager and a concierge and all those things that a fancy hotel would have. They're just a front to give you your guns, a place to stay.
And a neutral zone.
In a neutral zone where if you are in conflict with another assassin, it's Switzerland here. You can't fight each other here.
Yeah.
John Wick breaks that rule by killing the smuggest Italian man in the world in the second one.
In the second movie, yes.
In a way that I thought was a great, because as soon as you make a rule like that, the first thing that my mind goes is break that rule. It's interesting. Break it. John Wick, to quote Zack Snyder, fires all of his bullets or whatever and kills this guy, and which
he is at least a subordinate of the high table.
He's a member of the high table by that time or whatever. Because I think the guy sends him to kill his sister, who is a member of the high table. Or whatever.
So he gets involved
and then he fights
in this turf war, and Common gets involved, and so does Batwoman briefly.
Ruby Rose,
yes, who's great in it.
And when that happens, he is now what's called excommunicado. He is not protected by
or
anything.
Or as Ian McShane, excommunicado.
Yeah, Ian McShane, by the way,
Ian McShane
great
is
in all
Winston.
These.
Is
great. Wonderful.
He's
I
so
love him.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And Lance Riddick is the
Karen or Sharon.
Sharon, which is of course the
boatman.
The boatman of the ferryman who takes you to the underworld.
And he gets some action play in this movie, which I thought was well overdue.
Well, so we don't get to see much of it, but
but it's enough for me to be like, cool. I like that. It reminded me of that. Speaking of anime, The Big O. Do you remember that show? The Butler.
He's not Alfred. Wait, he's kind of Alfred.
He's Alfred-esque, but he's
I can't remember the
butler who serves the main character, who also occasionally.
Well, that's
gets
talking
in on
about
the
fun
action.
tropes. The battle butler. is because this also is in Helsing, the butler for the Helsing organization, who also has this whole convoluted past. Is like, yes, madam, I'll take care of you, but he can also like extend all these essentially like piano wire and just like cut people into pieces. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So he's excommunicated, which means he's no longer protected. And now Winston says, like, you're excommunicated. I'm going to give you, out of professional respect or whatever, I'm going to give you an hour to just sort of get out of Dodge or whatever, or maybe 6 hours or whatever, to get as far away as you can or do whatever you want to do.
He's in the middle of New York. He's in the middle of Manhattan.
Yeah, there's a great scene as they're talking, like everyone stops to imply that like a lot of the people around them are just assassins. Makes it less cool if everybody's an assassin.
That's kind of an interesting concept, except
it's cool as an idea for a moment.
It's like, guess
not
what?
You
the
think
world
about
is
it.
Mostly assassins.
Yeah, that's not possible. Someone has to be working at McDonald's.
But that guy working at McDonald's could one day get the phone call and get like, I'm activated. I gotta go. Sorry, here's your fish fillet. I gotta go. And he pulls out an Uzi or something, because that kind of comes up with
and so it
zero.
It ends in a great place, John Wick 2, which is like he's on the run and everyone's going to be out for him.
And then John Wick 3 essentially starts in the last few minutes of that.
Literally. He's running around like a lunatic.
Yep. It's raining. He's got his pit bull with him. He's got his dog.
Yeah, and he let's give our overall thoughts on the movie, then let's get into the spoiler specifics.
Okay, so
what do you like about it?
Well, what I came for. I mean,
the action.
The action is still very consistent. The style is still very slick. It's cool places where cool-looking people fight in a cool way, and it is brutal when that one guy shows up at the very beginning when he's at the library and he finds the book.
That's an NBA player.
That's an NBA. Of course he is. Yeah. He's 7 feet tall.
Yeah. John Wick just beats him with a book.
And you get to see that jaw get a little loose. Because what I like about these movies is again, it talks about that idea of what is violent and what is gory. The violence in this is so ridiculous.
The gore is cartoon-ish.
Yeah, but it's not even that, because it's almost an afterthought.
Yeah. And it's not gore as much as it's just blood.
Right.
We never see like guts or innards.
It's not Kill Bill. We don't see a guy's head. We don't see any decapitations or anything.
It's mostly like either a bludgeoning death or like a knife death, but like you don't.
You want to talk about a knife death?
We'll get to it.
Oh my god, that.
But like that guy attacks him before the contract goes active,
right? Because he's like, no one will know anyway. Yeah, and obviously, even I think that does a really smart thing, because that sets up like he knows him as well. He's like, oh, not you, and he's just like, well, who's gonna stop me?
I think the one thing these movies are missing is someone that John Wick is afraid of. That's like, we get people he respects, like, hey Frank, how you doing? Remember when like he's fighting Adrian Padalecki or whatever in the first movie, in his bedroom or whatever, and then there's a black assassin who looks like he works at a Home Depot or something, and he comes out and sees John Wick. He's like, oh hey John, like hey Larry, like they're friends.
Well, it's even like the point later in the movie after Zero, the guy who's got his team of ninjas after him, where they end up on Sanctuary. He's like, dude, I just gotta say, I'm a big fan.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, you're awesome. You do not disappoint. You are dope.
I liked that to a degree, but they're all people that like Willem Dafoe also was really great in that first movie.
I love Lawrence Fishburne as the king of the Bowery, and also my roommates got really whacked out because Jason Mantzoukas shows up, and it's just like, do you know Jason Mantzoukas?
Is he one of the ninjas?
No. He's the TikTok man. He's the right hand man of the Bowery King. He's the guy with the big beard.
Oh no, he's in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yes,
I love him. Yeah,
he's the Mantzoukas, who's
TikTok, Mr. Wick. Like I love that.
He's one of the funniest actors. Great comedian. Great podcast.
Oh, he's great in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
He's great in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But seeing him in that, we were all just like, Zooks, man, Zooks is in this. Too bad we don't get really see him kick ass. But
to finish up, the only thing that I think these movies miss is someone that he's afraid of, or someone that is so good, like even John Wick is like, shit, they sent him after me.
Right.
Fuck. Like they're always like common, like they're really equal as far as combatants.
They're common so much that one of them is common.
Yeah. And like, but they're just people that he respects, and he's like, oh, he could take me out. But John Wick is just also crafty, clever, and like he's been around the block too many times.
Right.
Where like Willem Dafoe, he respects Larry or whatever, he respects Common.
obviously Winston and Sharon.
I think what you need is like, and this is a movie all about stylization and pomp and circumstance and,
Boy,
and stuff.
howdy.
You should go to a guy who's there. Little tangent. Bear with me. There's a games I used to play called Armored Core.
Hell yeah, I know Armored Core.
Yeah. I used to play Armored Core 2 and 3, and at the arena is one of my favorite places where you fight all these different ravens. They're just Gundams, really.
Yeah, it's all mech.
But and you fight
Very
them, and each one
westernized
has a
mech.
different name and a different pilot and a different look and a different design. Some are big tanks with way too much missiles.
Some
and
are a little
bazookas,
more. Some
and
are a little more lightweight.
and
run
crafty
around.
and can move real quick. At the very tip top of the arena is the #1 guy called Ares, the god of war. Lots of cool mythos. They say that like in the description, I remember they said something like, no one knows where he came from. No one knows how he got here. He beat the last #1 guy, who's #2 is the #2 rank in the arena, who has forever been trying to get back up there. And in the arena, you have kill contracts or no kill contracts. You can fight someone in the arena, and if you win, you die. They're dead, and you get more money, or they'll beat you, but they'll let you live, so you can come back and try again.
Non-lethal, because you're in a giant robot.
Ares and all these ravens, they also take missions and whatever. Ares doesn't do that. He has built his life. He's already done the missions. He survives strictly on the arena, looking for the worthy foe to beat him, and no one comes close. Eventually, of course, you beat him.
You beat him. You have to.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to, but when you beat him, you get there's a award you get where you can put no matter anything on your AC, no matter how heavy it is, it doesn't affect your weight.
That's awesome.
So you get a little cheat
Much
code
like Metal Gear, it's like if you beat the game in a certain way, you
get stealth camo or
you
whatever.
get a bandana that gives you infinite ammo.
Yeah, I think Sean did that when we were growing up. Is he did freeze behind every single guy.
Yeah,
if you do it, you get stealth camo.
In Metal Gear Solid 3, if you go through most of the game or the whole game up to a point of a particular boss battle and you kill nobody, there's a sequence where the character of the Sorrow puts you in a fugue state where you go through essentially the river Styx, and it shows all the people you've killed as ghosts or zombies. But if you kill nobody, it's just the bosses, because the bosses kill themselves after you fight them.
Yeah.
So you could go completely
You're talking
non-lethal.
about like not Dead Cell. That's I'm thinking of 2.
That's 2.
3 is like the B man,
The Cobras.
and yeah.
And who includes the Pain, who is a B-man.
Yeah, I remember him. So like, and everyone's afraid of Ares. No one ever takes a kill contract with him because he'll kill you.
Yeah, you die.
And he only accepts challenges that interest him. That's what John Wick needs. John Wick needs a guy who is kind of like him. He maybe walked away, or he lives in a mansion, and he's like so bored that he only takes things that interest him. And he goes like, there's a contract on John Wick. He's like, John Wick, you say? And he goes, interesting. He's like, how many people has he killed? He's like, his last confirmed kill count is up to like, I don't know, 800 people. And he's like
Small village.
and he's like, what's the bounty at? And he goes like, well, I don't even care about the bounty. I have enough money.
Right.
And he goes,
I'm here for the thrill.
and he was like, I love a worthy adversary. Someone that John Wick is afraid of and is 2 steps ahead of him. Like, that would be very interesting. I hope we get to that.
Because that's one of my problems.
We kind of get that with Zero.
Yeah.
But
he doesn't even
apes
know
his
Zero.
stuff immediately. Like,
Yeah.
they just vanish, and then John Wick does it. He's like, oh, shit. Like,
Yeah.
So let's little tangent. Let's get back to the thing.
Yeah,
That's something I think they're missing, though, is a adversary who's not like evil or insane. He just loves the thrill and loves the challenge. Like, it's an art thing. Like, he admires another artist, kind of like Zero does, but less in like a silly kind of fanboy way. More ridiculous.
That's definitely on the track of where my big criticisms are related to those stakes, where there has to be stakes. But I'll get to it in a minute.
So it opens up. John Wick's on the run, and he's trying to find some place. He finds he gets hurt by that big basketball man, and he gets, I think it's that the Keymaker that stitches him back up for the last 5 minutes. Remember, like he goes to that doctor.
Yeah, I
like,
think it's the same guy. I don't know, but essentially it's like I like this where it's like you got 30 seconds and he gives him only so much. And he's like, I can't do anything now. If I do, they'll kill me.
And he goes,
so he has to do surgery on himself and then make it look good by shooting him.
Yeah, and then he tells him you can take those pills that'll help you with the pain or whatever and get out of here. And then we get, I'm going to try to keep it spoiler free, but I like to talk about some of the things I like a little quick. We get a great fight sequence in what is a antique weapon shop.
Yeah, he goes to the one place that makes sense to him, and it's like, all right, well, just an old weapon shop.
He even puts together a gun out of a bunch of other revolvers. He takes the firing pin and the chassis of this one. The
chamber isn't big enough, so he's like, all right, I just got to just get this revolver to a better thing, and uses it. That's cool.
Yeah.
The first 10 minutes of this movie are dope.
Yeah. And then he gets one bullet in, and then it's worthless.
And then it's all just.
And then they have a great fight sequence where they're using knives and axes and stuff. There's a part where like he one of the assassins is throwing knives and he just hits his own guy a bunch of times. John Wick is just like moving. And
John Wick just pin cushions dudes. Like he kills them with knives with extreme prejudice, and it's awesome. He's just like thunk 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 thunk.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's dope.
And like the kudos to the stuntman for making it believable.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, he kills a guy with an axe. Like 30 feet away.
There's one guy who's just like, I'm not feeling too good, and you just see him double chunk an axe and gets him in the head, and I'm like,
good stuff.
Yeah.
And this is what I get back to is like
that's what I'm here for.
The hand-to-hand stuff I think is a lot more interesting than some of the gun stuff.
Yeah.
The gun stuff is cool for about 2 minutes, and then it kind of goes on for too long.
Well,
and you're
it's the middle action sequence when he gets to, and we'll get to it. Like, so an adjudicator shows up.
Someone who works for the high table.
Right. They work for the high table.
And she's mad at...
I think it's they, because the actor playing them is non-binary.
Okay.
Is yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've seen them in other movies before, and I always assumed it was just a woman, but I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, but that's apparently that's how the character is supposed to be. But the adjudicator, which is one of these situations where you have a character who's just like, I am the function, and I come in to deal with.
Reminds me of The Architect.
Yes.
the Matrix 2.
Or who's the one from Serenity from Firefly?
I don't know.
I think it's Chadwick Boseman actually who plays it.
I mean, she was so easy.
She was so easy for. Yeah, I can't remember, but that he has a name that's just the something.
Yeah, but so they talk to Winston, and they're upset that he let John Wick kill that man without stopping him.
Right.
And also, in Winston's defense, it's John Wick. He probably would have stopped you and killed you.
Right.
But I don't know. He seems to like Winston, because
they have an amiable relationship.
He killed the Italian man, and then Winston was just like, Jonathan, let it go. And then he goes, and then when he just goes, and just blows him away. And Winston is like, what have you done? Like, it's a great. Ian McShane's so good.
He's a powerhouse in everything he's in.
So that put John Wick on the run, and the high table is mad at Winston, and they're thinking about taking the Continental from him. Winston's like, I've been of service for 20 years, 40 years or whatever. And
this whole thing is I have served and I will be of service is this repeating motif that is involved with being under the table.
Yeah.
And he is under the table, and the adjudicator and therefore the high table is just like, not only did you let him kill him on sacrosanct,
you gave him an hour
you
to
gave him
let
time.
Him go. Yeah.
Like this will have to be punished.
And we'll
get to it.
She gets 7 days or whatever, and you're gonna 7 days, and you need to get your affairs in order in 7 days or something like that.
And then they essentially this character just pops up to everyone John has connected with before and deals out punishment. Yeah. That's what we know.
I know I said we're not supposed to talk spoilers, so I should stop because I'm talking spoilers. Let's just talk more. Let's talk a little bit more about where we know we love the action. That's that goes without saying.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about performances? Perhaps
we were talking about what Keanu Reeves gets to do, and I think Keanu Reeves maybe has 10 lines in this whole movie.
Yeah, that's kind of par for the course with these movies.
But he doesn't really get to. So once we cross over into spoiler territory, I'll get into everything that's on my mind about this movie because I feel like I've got a lot to say about what I really am really bored about this movie with.
Mm-hmm. It does kind of end in a way that I'm like, so we're back where we started.
Yeah,
it feels pointless in a way.
Well, and I think
it also makes me like a character less, frankly.
And if they leaned into that a little more with what I feel like they should do, I would be okay with it. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love seeing Halle Berry. She didn't get to do much in this movie, considering she's second billed.
Halle Berry is, like every supporting character in these movies, a person who has some previous past coming in contact with John.
And in this, it's kind of
and it's either good or bad.
Right.
or to some degree, and they have feelings about it. They help them, and then they vanish from the movie.
Right. The same with Angelica Houston, who is apparently relates back to his actual roots and his
from Yugoslavia or
Belarus.
something, or Belarus. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and she has a battle ballet battle ballet wrestling Russian gangster land. Everyone has tattoos.
Apparently, yeah. Like if that was like so over the top, I was like, oh come on.
Well, I was almost thinking that these ballet dancers are going to start pulling out guns and like practice ballet fighting, and I'd be like, sure, why not? That makes sense in this movie.
It would, but it'd be too much.
So it's like he grew up in the school of hard knocks.
And he's asking her for a favor that she's kind of like, I don't have to help you with this, even though we have rules.
But there are rules
for this favor or whatever. Like,
and then the rule is like he at least needs to get out of Dodge, essentially without giving away too much. He's going to try to right the wrongs of the last movie so that the whole world is not out to kill him.
Feels like time wasted, frankly. He doesn't seem like he's that upset about killing that guy at the end of the second movie.
No,
he
but
seems like he's like, because he liked the sister, and he didn't. First of all, he didn't kill her.
No,
she killed herself.
She took her
and then
own life.
He shoots her in the head after it's done to make it look like he did it.
Right,
but. Also, like, John Wick wouldn't slit your wrists. No. If anything, people should have looked at that death and been like, "That's odd. I don't think this is
not his MO.
This isn't how he does it. He does headshot and he vanishes." Like,
sometimes he'll put sometimes he'll turn you into a pincushion or kill you with a book. But that's only when it becomes necessary.
Like, why would he slit her wrist then shoot her in the head?
Yeah. Why would you shoot a man before throwing him out of a plane?
Yeah, very much.
Speaking of other actors, like later on, what's his Jerome Flynn?
Yes.
Braun shows up doing an accent I cannot even begin to know where he's supposed to be from.
It's vaguely European.
And I don't know where he's supposed to be from because they're in Morocco.
Vaguely like Eastern European, but vaguely Eastern.
Vaguely Turkish or something. But I'm like, that's a British man.
Yeah.
And he's talking in a language. He's talking in the thing I don't get.
Yeah.
Because he goes to. So this one's just a little world travel-y. We leave New York. We haven't left New York before.
Is it though? We don't see anything more than like compounds and tunnels.
Yeah, it could be. Talk about where it's filmed. It's filmed in a lot somewhere or in Vancouver.
Yeah,
but we do get some shots of New York, like in
a desert.
And a desert. We find out that everything has happened in just a week.
Yeah. I believe that.
I was like, oh, right. This has all just been a week. That will further into my thesis that
even from
2
the
and
first
3
movie
should be the same movie.
Even from the first movie, it's like 2.5 weeks. He goes dog, got his car back, killed the guy at the end of the second movie. Now, it's like that.
Well,
it's
apparently,
quick.
According to Angelica Houston's character, the dog dying was like Monday, and this is part 3 is now Thursday.
That's hilarious.
Like I'm like, so this is because that makes sense with part 2 and 3 because part 3 really literally starts 30 minutes after part 1.
Yeah.
Or part 2 rather.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, that's cool. Obviously, there's another day if he's traveling to another country.
Did you feel like the middle section of this movie kind of felt either superfluous or dragged out? Because when we get to
a lot of it has to do with why it has to get dragged out.
Yeah, and also like the ending makes me feel like, what was the point of that then?
Yeah,
because like it doesn't mean anything. Because he did. We'll get to spoilers in a second.
It really does.
I guess let's get into spoilers because we're having a little tough time talking.
Because also this movie came out when last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can kind of get into it a little bit.
Yeah.
So essentially, what
he needs to find. The one, what's it called? The one who sits above the table.
Yeah,
I think that's what he's called.
Right,
he's the leader of the high table.
Right, but he's above the table. Everybody else is under the table.
He's there at
the high table,
the kids' table,
and
there's the regular
high table that everyone else is under.
Yeah.
My theme that I'm going to get at is this movie series that I originally thought, at least the first one, is about a man who got out of this system, very mythical, very specific, very esoteric, and very mysterious and bureaucratic.
They have
system.
coins that can either buy you a dinner or everything you need.
Much like the word tenant.
Yeah,
they'll open doors. Some you want, some you don't.
Well, no, like the value of the coins just doesn't mean anything.
No.
You can get a steak dinner or every gun in this room. Like
guns. Lots of guns.
Lots of guns. Which is a reference to Matrix.
Matrix, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if that was me or not. I was like, is that?
Well, I was like, that's a reference. But the thing that I'm wondering about this movie and the creators and everything is I think what makes this not interesting to me is that John Wick in the first movie, he appears as something that comes out of nowhere and becomes a stick in the spokes of the system.
Yeah.
In these later movies, the bureaucracy of the world is unchallenged. And much like you were talking about, like, John Wick needs someone to battle him. My thing is, like, because
bureaucracies are not cool to battle. They're boring.
Well, this movie doesn't think so. This movie loves its lore and loves its bureaucracy.
But it doesn't ever want to tell you enough about it to let you get
because
invested.
it's both overwritten and so mythical that it can't be written enough. And also because there's nobody there that someone could say, hey, John Wick, what's this all about? Everyone knows everything. John Wick knows everything. Not only is he unchallenged by enemy combatants, he's unchallenged by the system. He knows everything he's supposed to do.
I'll push back on the unchallenged by combatants. I think the ending battle in the glass thing, I think that's real good.
Where anytime his shoulder gets close to one of those little like crystal skull things, it just explodes.
Yeah, that's really good.
I love it.
And I really felt like they're like, oh, he's old and weak or whatever. Like he kind of pulls it out there where I felt like he could. He's not going to lose because that's what these movies are about. But like, I felt the tension enough to where like John Wick's like, I could lose here or whatever.
Yeah.
But I agree with you for the most part.
He
needs an adversary and not someone the Batman has his Joker.
Mm-hmm. He needs something. That. He needs a Moriarty. But maybe this is because, and I'm not going to talk about Indiana Jones. I'm going to talk about one thing about his character, and it's
Belloc.
What
is it? Belloc?
No, it's not any of that. It's the line where he is someone who someone says, all right, what are we going to do next, Indy? I don't know. I'm just making this up as I go along. I think this movie would be more interesting if there was a moment where John Wick realized something that he could have an upper hand, where he's like, he is such a subordinate and such a functionary of of everything under the table that everything he does is like, I know I must go to point A to point B to point C to point D in order to make everything right with the system. But he's not against the system. And I think the movie.
But he started out against the system.
Right. And I think what happened is after this first movie, the writers, everyone was just like, we got a really cool kind of world that, as you mentioned, has combined everything. We've got a lot of kung fu. We got some samurai stuff in there. We got some Yakuza stuff. We got some Eastern European stuff. It's kind of anime.
Middle Eastern stuff.
So all of this is now reverent in the film. We, as the audience, are supposed to think, ooh, that's really cool. But
we don't know what the high table is, what it does, where it came from, what it serves, what its ends are. Also, the man who sits above the high table, just a man.
He's just a guy in a desert. But everything is so like, you must walk from this point to the desert, and you'll know when. And I thought that was like, I'm like, okay. My problem is, and maybe it's just because what I like about things is, I feel like at times, this is obviously a series that is way more style than substance. Sure. Because there's no themes in it.
No, the style is the substance.
The style is the substance. Like, what is John Wick about? Well, it's about a guy kicking ass. But is there anything more to it? No. The movie literally spends the whole time saying, what do we have to deal about consequences? Consequences. The movie tells you what to think about it.
Yeah.
Everything else, you're just there for the action. And there is that point where he says
it divorces itself from the first two, which are kind of about, it's about kicking ass. But now it's about consequences.
Because he mentions a line about like he has to stay alive in order to remember his wife. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that feels very, especially after the character has no real emotions through all of it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I have to live as a monument to my old self. That's not compelling enough to me.
The guy from the high table said that, like, I'll let you live, but it will not be as you want, or whatever. And I was like, this feels like wrong. Like, we should have done something else. What would have been better is if John Wick figured out a way to stick it to the high table.
Yeah.
And then the high table, out of desperation, are like, we got to go to the character X I talked about. Someone that John Wick is, like, afraid of. Maybe not. He doesn't strike me as someone afraid of anything, but like when he would hear that, he would maybe panic,
right?
Or he would be like,
or
shit.
It could be like a thing like talking about Cowboy Bebop, a vicious to his Spike, his yin to his yang, like something that's like I'm the dark side of you.
Yeah, and you also need, or like, what would be darker than John
right.
Wick? By the way. Not a great man.
No,
he's probably a murderer.
Yeah,
things away.
He's probably killed about 800 people, maybe deserving, maybe not. But also, we introduce a world where it's assassin world, so everybody's kind of open game.
Also, I think that like in we're going back to Metal Gear. We're talking about Metal Gear 3. One of the people you have to fight is what's his name? The sniper. The pain, and then there's the whatever.
The end.
Yeah, he's the sniper, and it's hard to fight him because he's just so patient.
Yeah,
like I would.
Well, he's supposed to be like 150 years old and is photosynthetic, and you have to sneak up on him some way or fight him as well. It's really one of the best boss fights in game.
A lot of times, a lot of people beat him just by like they see him run across in front of him, and like and you have to you kill him by happenstance. Thankfully,
do like when me and my friends before pandemic took place, and we had to we all been hanging around drinking and decided to kill him non-lethally. Took an hour. Took more than an hour.
How would you find him?
You have
One
to
time
be
he
very...
snuck up behind me and was like, "Gotcha." And I was like, "Oh, god damn it!"
Gotcha, boy.
And he doesn't kill you. He just puts you to sleep and makes you do it again.
Yep. Well,
like,
you have to use all the tools you have, like sonar and everything else. And
I think you put it best as he needs a Moriarty. He needs a man who is one step ahead of you. And then when John Wick like thinks like, all right, I can take him hand to hand, and then it's just whoosh, like every time he tries to throw a punch, he's got this great counter punch that like John Wick can't get past.
The one thing I don't want is I don't want a mentor. I don't want
we had that already with Willem Dafoe. Kinda.
Yeah. What I want is not just like they call in like the rogue, like the guy who's just like, yeah, I could take him and I'll do it for fun.
That's what we had though. Willem Dafoe is I could do that, but you need someone who, like, he's fanatical about death. Like, he only kills people that interest him because he's built, like I said, like Ares, he builds a fortune, and he doesn't need, does he work for the high table? Yeah, if he wants to, but he doesn't have to unless he wants to. But someone says John Wick, and he goes, it would be my masterpiece. Killing the unkillable, killing the boogie, the man who kills the boogeyman. Like, that would be cool for him. And he would do, and almost out of, like, respect, he would, like, let John Wick,
which
like,
again,
he would call John Wick and let him know, like, I just want to let you know, like, I'm coming for you, and I want you at your best, please, like, or something like that. Like, that's what he needs.
Again, you get that a little bit with Zero, but him and
Zero
and Keanu Reeves, not Keanu Reeves, but John Wick are not on the same level. He's very good. Zero is very good. I love him and his sushi bar samurais.
Yeah, they're cool.
The one guy that just like you didn't see him, and then all of a sudden the hoodie comes up and he had been there the whole time.
Yeah,
like that's dope.
It is good.
Because and then Lawrence Fishburne doesn't die, but he gets 7 cuts and they slice him up good.
So what were they gonna do to Ian McShane then? Ian McShane didn't help John Wick, essentially. No. He gave him an hour and said, like, you're gonna be killed.
Now here's something. Was
Lawrence Fishburne gave him a gun? Yeah. Like what would Winston's punishment be?
Well, I think it's also a matter of
you leave Ian McShane alone, movie. I like him.
Well, it's also just kind of like, well, you know, it's like, well, I would have done the same. You know, he shot you and threw you off, but I'm pretty sure that vest he had was like bulletproof or something, because when those bullets hit, it's like puff, 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 and he falls off the building.
I'd like to think that Winston did it to save him.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the idea of Winston being such a chode at the end. He's too cool and interesting. He'd be like, I can do this all day, madam. Like don't you dare hang up on, and he just hangs up on it. Like, I like Winston. I like
I like Lance Reddick. Sharon's awesome.
Yeah, and at some point, John Wick has killed hundreds of people. At some point, you're going to be like, you can't just throw manpower at him. You got to think strategically.
That's why I really liked it. It's like, oh, John, you've been out of the game for a while. When they send in the goons, they're like highly protected.
Ready. Yeah, they're ready.
They got bulletproof helmets. So you're instant. They figured out their one weakness: getting shot in the head.
Get shot in the face.
So they stopped it.
So now he opens the thing and shoots them in the head.
Right.
He closes it.
That's where you get some really. I wish it had been a little more clever, because mostly it's just these guys choosing not to shoot him while they wait. until him and Sharon show up with buckshot and just crater these dudes' heads.
Yeah, what would have been better? I mean, not better because to a degree, I liked watching them all die. But like, what would have been better is like, I mean, if you're thinking tactically, shut off the power to the thing. Send them in with night vision and like matte black, no gloss, like black.
Right.
Painting. Then make them stalk up the thing floor by floor till they get to John Wick.
Right.
John Wick, as good as he is
not invincible.
If you trap him in a room with all these people, he won't win.
He also gets, in the other movies, he gets more wounded. Like, he gets more beat up. And in this one, not so much. He's a little more untouchable.
Yeah.
Except for the times he needed to get shot. Because that middle section with him and Halle Berry going off in Morocco, that was probably one of the most boring fights.
It was.
Because it's just going back to the whole pop, 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 pop.
And I know with the dogs,
and then you get some
we were
dogs.
supposed to be like, that's interesting. Not
really.
It was okay.
Yeah.
Is what I felt.
Because you really can't do much about the dog violence without actually getting really graphic.
Yeah, I know what we're supposed to think is like, oh, that's a really cool, new, innovative action scene when she jumps on top of Halle Berry and then up the thing and grabs the guy. But I was just like, oh, it's cool choreography and stuff for the stunt people. But I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
And I know part of
those dogs are not going to walk around with men's genitalia ripped out in their mouth. Like,
yeah, and I know I'm not
this movie.
And when I say I didn't feel anything, I don't mean like, oh, I felt no remorse for these guys getting killed. It's not
they're
what I
not
mean.
people.
I just don't feel. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're supposed to die, but they're not.
just
They're not
thugs.
serving me interestingly enough. Is
Right.
what I mean. And then we have the thing where he's in the desert and he cuts off his finger when he meets the man,
which has no consequence whatsoever.
Which like because he betrays that at the end anyway.
Yeah.
So
if you want to make it
point?
interesting, cut off his index finger that he uses to shoot guns.
Now
he's got one hand missing.
Now he's gonna do it with that.
Yeah, he's having to spin it around his pinky or stuff. I'm just saying.
Yeah, like I feel like that middle part of the movie is convoluted and doesn't mean anything. What would have been better is you bring in character X.
Yeah, and I think also, I really just think it's a consequences. It's a consequence of the creators of this series really falling in love with their creation.
Getting a little too bogged down in world building.
Yeah, and the world building would be fine if it was also deconstructed in some way, if something interesting. Again, John Wick is like, I don't know what to do. I have to follow these rules. And then he finds something out that's like, wait a minute, they would never suspect this. Because then all of a sudden the character has to do something different. Everyone's going through the motions because everybody is fine with the rules.
Yeah.
Because I think the movie loves its bureaucracy because it's like, we've created something pretty cool.
Some of the rules are cool. Some of the rules I like. I like the rule of continental is neutral ground. Cool. But of course, when you make that rule, the first thing you want to do is like, all right, now story-wise, you got to break the rule.
Right.
Because that's what you want to see. I think that what I would have liked...
I think it's also that they all take it so seriously. It's meant to be like, this is all very respectable and everything, and I'm like, that's fine, but I see where that comes from. I see the elements of that from other things. I see like the Yakuza film influence. I see the gangster film influence. I see the comic book influence.
There are all these unspoken bylaws that you must abide by. And John Wick goes to a Russian lady with a thing and like, you must serve me. Or what does he say? Like, you must accept my ticket or whatever.
The Angelica Houston, the woman who trained him or raised him up, he's like, I have this particular Eastern Orthodox cross, and therefore I know I get this. I get to go to the next level.
But even then, she's like, I don't have to do that. I'm like, yeah, you do, movie. This is about rules.
Don't tell me someone's gonna break the rules in a movie where you love rules.
Yeah, and
this movie loves authority.
The person who should break the rule would be John Wick, which is what he's supposed to do. At some point, because there's another movie being made, or I believe it's coming out this year, or not
2021. 2021. We're at the end of this year.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So I feel like what needs to happen is we need to put faces to the high table because you've already you can't go back now and make it less specific.
Because what's the stakes of things by the end of this movie is the Continental in New York gets reestablished, resanctified.
Yeah.
But now when
so many terms disavowed, excommunicado.
Yeah, excommunicado. And there's the room with all the ladies, all the receptionists. who all have tattoos.
The Suicide Girls.
The Suicide Girls, yeah, essentially are all there because, of course, it is. They have to be cool and
sexy tatted ladies.
Yeah, and it's
even the older ladies who are like 60.
Well, they've been in it for a long time.
They've been doing they've been
doing this since the 70s.
When they get to that, they get a free 10% off your assassination card or whatever.
It's be generous.
Yeah.
But so by the end of this movie, the Continental is back in motion, but now it's not a place where John Wick can go anymore. John Wick is supposed to be dead, even though the adjudicator is like, his body's missing. He's like, it's not my problem. They're like, that's right, it isn't. Goodbye. So we'll have to keep hunting him. But now the Bowery King's like, I'm going to war with the High Table, and I need you because are you pissed? He's
was
like,
he a member of the High Table?
He was under the table.
Okay, so
because like every city has an under
world.
Yeah, has
a man of homeless spies or whatever.
It's Sherlock Holmes's homeless network in Sherlock.
Yeah,
like but he has.
I like him as a character.
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne's character.
Yeah. It just feels like it felt almost. The end felt almost like a parody, where he's like, "Are you?" It almost felt like he should have said, "Are you back, John?" And he says like, "I'm pissed off."
Yeah.
Are you pissed off, John? He just goes, "Yeah," and I would have been like, you were pissed off already.
Yeah,
this doesn't change anything. Like this,
but I don't think he was angry because he was like, I just got to go through the motions to get everything done, and in the end, it didn't really work out. Mostly because Halle Berry freaked out when dude shot the
dog.
Yeah, who was wearing body armor?
Didn't the dog live?
Yeah, dog was fine. Dog was wearing body armor. He shot him where the body armor.
Oh yeah, because
was.
We're not going to kill two dogs.
Right. I was like, they're not going to do that again.
All right, we would be remiss if we didn't quickly talk about. I think those you perfectly encapsulated, and I think I did. My things I didn't like. We liked the action. Let's talk about our favorite action-y bits. I think I would be remiss if we didn't talk about. I think my least favorite is, of course, the one in the desert.
The one in Morocco, yeah.
It's fine, but it's nothing I haven't seen before from this.
And nothing I haven't seen better.
Yeah. But I think the stuff that does the best is, of course, hand-to-hand stuff. And I think the fight in the knife museum or whatever was good, but also the fight between Zero and his students, especially the fact that it's the dudes from the raid add an extra level of credibility.
I love at the end he doesn't kill those guys, they don't kill him, just like see you around.
Yeah, like, he goes, be seeing you,
be seeing
or whatever he does always.
He speaks in Indonesian to them. And
he speaks all the languages.
Well, yeah,
but he says nothing.
He's not a person. He's a god of war.
I understand, yeah, but I'm saying he never says anything other than like why or be seeing.
Unless he's speaking because he's like I'm a child of Belarus. I'm a child of Belarus.
Yeah,
and his name is Jardani.
I guess
she calls him Jardani.
I think that's more like a title.
I wonder if that's a title.
I don't know. But then we get the fight with Zero, and they have a bunch of cool stuff. And I liked the idea of they can just vanish. I like the idea of you're bringing in something more than just like really competent hitmen. Like, because the first movie we have Larry the cable guy or whatever, his buddy who gets killed by Adrian Padalecki or whatever, and he's just like a guy. He could just disguise himself as like, I don't know, a lumber associate at Home Depot.
All he has to do is put on a toque, hat, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm there.
And these, but these guys,
to me like the Bourne Identity. Like I think about like they're
assassins.
The assets, I think, is what they're called. Oscar Isaac was one of them.
Yeah, Oscar Isaac, Clive Owen is
in the first one.
Clive Owen has my favorite moment because it's mirrored in the last. I should watch those movies.
Yeah,
I haven't seen them in like 10 years,
and I've not seen them all.
The first one is when Clive Owen plays a great sniper.
Yeah, but he's also a music teacher. Like he's also, but you get the idea.
And he tells him, he tells Jason Bourne, and he goes like, "Look at this," and he goes like, "Look what they make us do," and then Bourne has this little moment of empathy for like 2 seconds, and he kills him, and then he says that at the end of the third movie, which I thought was really great.
Look at what they made.
Then we have, so who are the other ones? We have Carl Urban is one. Kirill, he plays like a Russian dude, and then there's the Moroccan guy from the second movie is Baksani Desh. Like they're all these different flavors of assassin.
Right.
I like that,
but they all match with Jason Bourne.
None of them can mystically vanish.
Right. Or they're not on a mythical level, but they are agents and assets that can match and put Jason Bourne on edge. You see him having to think. don't really have John Wick never really has to do that.
We need a real adversary and not someone that he can tussle around with. Of course, you want like good hand-to-hand fight sequences. Like him and Common have some really good stuff, but.
And that's also probably why they kept Ruby Rose alive at the end of the second one. Is like, we got to bring this character back.
No, I don't think they will. I think it's just like, because
Zero, he has a sword through him at the end of this movie.
Oh, he's dead.
He might come back.
No, he's dead.
when the camera came around, that sword was through. I'm like, you don't usually get by with a sword through you.
John Wick lets Common live because he respects him, and he knows he's just doing his job because he didn't kill his boss, but Common thinks that. So he puts the knife in and he goes, if you take this out, you'll die, but you could get to a hospital, blah, blah, blah.
That's right. And it leaves it at that.
Yeah.
Because you got to leave an opening.
He's not leaving Zero alive. That guy's a nutcase.
Yeah.
Like that guy would like show up at his house, be like, how did you do it? Like he would ask him like all these Star Wars nerd questions, but for killing.
Like, I heard you did about that. How'd you cut that guy's throat out?
But so I don't think that would happen. But he needs someone who puts him on edge, makes him think on his feet, and who is, like you said, is Moriarty, someone who's a step ahead. And of course, if they ever come to hand stuff, that maybe he's just much more lethal, and maybe he beats him, dare I say it, without killing him.
Yeah.
Or maybe he beats him and be like, what would be better, killing me or killing the high table? Like, which would be the better master stroke for you? And he'd be like, that's a good point.
Or something that I always enjoy is when like,
or maybe
the high command hires the wild card and the wild card just kills them instead. It takes their power.
Or you could
love that
if you want to do like he sees himself as the dark mirror of artistry. Tell him to come up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, tell him to come up while we finish talking. What you could do is my big thing would be have the art. You pick him because he sees himself in John Wick, and he wants to kill him as his masterstroke, and maybe he realizes like, oh, I beat him, and he goes like, all right, I'm going home now, but he doesn't kill him. He's just like, I won. I'm the greatest.
Right.
Goodbye now. Like,
yeah, I don't have to kill you, but I made you think you would die, and that's enough for me. Have a good life.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That would subvert expectations hard. It would really.
That's very martial arts.
Piss a lot of people off. This is my friend Luke. Luke, this is my podcast co-host Matt.
What's up, man? Doing all right?
Yeah.
We're about to wrap this up
John
here.
Wick episode.
Which episode? Like which one in the series?
Parabolum, the third one.
Yeah. And just talking about all of them together, kind of.
Yeah. But I think that would be the best thing for that movie is he needs someone to make him afraid because John Wick can just kill anybody whenever.
Yeah.
And the only people that he's
system to get challenged.
That too.
Because I don't usually like situations where everybody knows what's going on. It's not a matter of I'm like, oh, I want to know. I don't really care. I'm not here for the story of the high table. I'm not here for this mysticism. I'm here to watch Keanu Reeves turn a person into a pincushion.
Yeah.
So I don't care about the lore of John Wick as much as the creators care about the lore of John Wick.
The lore adds seasoning to everything and makes it better, but when you get bogged down in the world building, it becomes. Now I'm not watching the movie. I'm asking questions that I feel have to be answered.
Right. And again, I'm like, this is not an anti-establishment punk movie. This is a movie that loves rules.
Yeah, everything has rules. Every
very authoritarian.
Every well-dressed man in a suit and tie, very like fashionably.
Everything's Armani and cool, and everybody's got cool guns and everything. And I'm there for it.
I remember in John Wick 2 when he goes to get his guns from Peter Serafinowicz or whatever, and like he's this dapper man in like these golf clubs or gloves or whatever.
Well, that's like Serafinowicz gives that. Hello there.
Yeah, and he's like, may I represent the heckler and cock German made blah blah blah. And it's like a wine taster.
Yeah.
But of his guns and knives and stuff.
Would you care for a
In fact, he even calls the like after they goes like it's time for dessert, the cutlery, and he brings out the knives and he goes hand rolled German. Like this is a movie that loves the appearance of style.
Yeah,
which I appreciate that.
It loves cool, and hey, I like cool.
Yeah.
But I don't want to care about cool.
Yeah.
And I think these movies.
It becomes less cool when you start explaining what all of it means.
Because what cool is great with, especially like something like The Matrix, is when cool is being used to fight the establishment.
Yeah.
John Wick is fine with the establishment.
Well, he wasn't.
Because when he goes to the desert, the guy has his suit. Has a new suit for him.
That's right. Which means he knew that John Wick would say yes.
Make sure it's in his style.
Yeah.
It's right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that whole middle section where he's stuck in the desert and he has to meet the leader of the high table, and it's just a dude, and the dude, like John Wick,
just lives in a caravan out in the desert.
Up
in
until
Morocco.
last movie, John Wick was like, I don't want to be back. I don't want to be like, and now he's like, I'm going to war with the high table. I think John Wick, deep down, if you asked the character what he wanted, it would be to be like, I just want to go back to like hanging out with my dog. And
Yeah,
my
I have
house.
a dog
Well, his
again.
house got blown up in the second one, so now he's got to build a new house.
Well, he can get a house. He can get like a nice like duplex in downtown Manhattan.
Get
He's
that
fine.
puppers a nice house.
Yeah,
Charon's
I know plenty
really,
of people who take him for a walk.
Lance Reddick is really nice to that dog, which
Yes.
makes me feel like Winston didn't betray him. He shot him to make it look like he hurt him.
Right.
And maybe John Wick doesn't know that, but he's trying to protect him.
Well, it's also like I love that after he's excommunicado and he can't get back on grounds, the dog is fine. Lancer's like, yes, we have your all spot for you in here, and I'm
Yes.
like, that's nice. That's
Yeah,
good.
like they
the dog
open-
still gets the
They
executive
open the cab and Lance Reddick is like,
your services, your very own cheese pizza.
yeah, that's very good. Let's move on to recommendations real quick, and we
Well,
can.
damn, I have to think of something real
All
quick.
right, I have something
go
I
ahead,
want to
you go.
recommend first that I don't think is very good, but since we're talking about Ian McShane, I feel like it's fitting. I watched the new Hellboy with David Harbour.
Yeah, I've heard it's not good.
I didn't love it. I'll tell you what I do love about it. David Harbour.
Yeah.
He's real great. He's fucking great.
I like David Harbour,
and I like Ian McShane plays his dad. I love Ian McShane way more than I loved
what's that character, Professor
Bloom.
Yeah,
And I
originally
like
played by John Hurt. in
Yes,
the
I love John
Torres.
Hurt. I'm not shitting on him. I'm just saying I love like there's a part where Ian McShane comes back as a ghost and gives him shit like and tells him like stop like all this bullshit about prophecy. You're a man and a good one. Make your decision. Like it's much better than like Ebenezer. Like John Hurt was so dainty or something.
Well,
I don't
that's
know.
kind of how he is in the comics too. And I feel like this Hellboy is supposed to be like, yeah, no, everyone's not a scrawny little Magnola character. We're all big and
It's
broad.
like Hellboy meets Guardians of the Galaxy. Daniel Day Kim plays a wereleopard, which is pretty cool.
But he's a character in the.
Yeah.
He's one of the BPRD, right?
Yeah, and he was I don't know if he's BPRD, he's one of their sister organizations or whatever. Also there's a bunch of nods at the end of the movie. There's like a nod to Abraham Sapien. They find the fish tank and his hand comes up.
Right.
Thomas Hayden Church plays some guy called the Lobster.
Yeah, no, Lobster Johnson.
Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah.
And he meets him as a ghost, and David Harbour has the funniest reaction.
Lobster
where-
Johnson's awesome.
Like he goes, it's basically all the trappings of this movie are fine. The story is just bullshit, and everything happens all at once, and then it resolves quickly, and you don't care at all.
And it's not.
But
gonna
when he
get a
meets
sequel.
Lobster Johnson, he's sad because his dad's spoiler alert. He's sad because his dad is dead. His dad dies again. And he's like drinking at his grave. I like how belligerent this Hellboy is. He's like a teenager.
Yeah.
Whereas Ron Perlman's like, I've been around for a while or whatever. And he's drinking at his dad's grave, and then Thomas Hayden Church just shows up as Lobster Johnson's like, "There's a war coming. There's a sequel coming." Is what he might as well have said. And then he goes like, "Oh my God, I'm your biggest fan, and like I used to have like all your stuff growing up." And then he goes, "That's great, kid." And he goes, "Are you ready for the big fight?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think so." And he goes, "All right." And then he just walks through him as a ghost. He goes, "Oh my God!" He just turns around and like freaks out.
I love the character of Lobster Johnson because he's just like he's
Captain America without any of the
he's
goodness like or the goody two shoe
he's
stuff.
kind of Captain America, but he's more just like do you remember the Batman character of the gray ghost?
Yes.
Where it's like this turn of the century calling our cars, calling the Shadow.
Yeah.
Kind of a pulp noir kind of character. That's what Lobster Johnson is as a brutal murderer.
Yeah. He's killing Nazis.
He's
and demons and stuff.
this is pre-Nazis. I think he's killing like
he kills
like
Nazis.
Kaiserists.
He kills Nazis in the. We see him in a flashback when they meet Hellboy again. I also appreciate just like the style. It's directed by Neil Marshall, who did a lot of stuff I like. He did Doomsday, Dog Soldiers, The Descent.
He's popped up as a
Game of Thrones.
a character a director we send to.
Yeah, there's a
find
really
interesting.
cool image of David Harbour, like when he gets his crown and he gets like the fiery sword.
I've
like,
seen
that's
it.
fucking metal.
Yeah.
And then nothing happens. With
Well, it's like I love the monster designs, the big monsters that come out.
They're
and
cool.
Just like, they really rip some people up. I love it.
But it happens for like 2 minutes,
Yeah.
and then they just vanish.
Yeah,
They
they all look very Iron Maiden. They look like
One of them destroys the London Bridge. It comes out and it just like destroys it.
Spindly arms are up. It's got a halo around it. Essentially, it's this great meme joke going around about what angels really look like, which is just like a fiery wheel full of eyes.
Yeah.
It's just, do not be afraid.
There's some really cool gory deaths, but then like when he defeats Mia Jovovich, they just literally get sucked back into the ground. Everything looks exactly the same. Yeah. Also, there's in the original Guillermo del Toro Hellboy movies, which I concede are better. I'm just saying that there's some stuff I like about this movie is Hellboy is seen as like an urban legend. We don't know if he's really like out there or if he's not. Like we just like it's like people go on like news shows and like make fun of like what's Jeffrey Tambor's character?
Oh,
in the
don't remember.
He's in the first one. He plays the leader of the BPRD or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like Hellboy is an urban legend. It's a myth. And this he just walks into bars.
Yeah.
And no one's like, what the fuck? Like
they're like, oh, it's Hellboy again.
Like someone even asks him. There's a part where someone asks him for ID, and he's like, "Are you serious right now?" It doesn't. But it never addresses it. Like it doesn't make a point. Like he exists. He's in the world. The BPRD is a thing. We understand. Like everyone seems okay with like there's a demon man.
Right.
Like and no one ever goes like. So does that mean there are other demons? So he kills the good. So he's a good demon. And
but that means there are bad demons around, and they're not just like Pazuzu hopping into teenage girls. Like they're actually like creepy monster things that can eat me.
Should we be concerned about any of this? Like it's. Yeah.
Well, what I would love from a Hellboy situation is the Hellboy I've read that I liked is when he's on his own and he's going around from place to place to place, meeting mythical. Like he ends up in Ireland and he's having to deal with like. There's a great thing where he ends up like at a bar. And he's drinking with all these guys and everything, and they're all having a good time. And then, like, someone comes in to find him, and they're all skeletons. They're all corpses. That's cool. He's just been talking to the dead. And someone comes to bother him, and he's, like, drunk with a beer, and he's drunk with a bottle of liquor. He's like, hey, don't you mess with me. I've been talking with skeletons. And I'm like, because there's a sense of humor about the whole thing. Like, he's supposed to be funny.
I think the movie, for all its faults, actually nails Hellboy. Mm-hmm. There's even a part at the beginning where he goes there's a repetitive joke is he has a phone and he keeps breaking it. Like he'll be like, come on, man. God dang it. Like he'll just touch it with not his stone hand, his regular hand.
Right. Because
he just breaks it. Yeah. It happens like 3-4 times. It's funny. He goes down to Mexico to find his buddy, and the only reason he likes this dude is because he would drink with him. Because he's the only human person that would ever just treat him like a normal dude. And he goes down there, he's been turned into a vampire.
Yeah, I remember.
He accidentally he kind of accidentally kills him, but he doesn't want to. There's a real funny line. It's like, come on, man. Like, we would hang out, we would drink beer, you would play that acoustic hippie shit, and I would play real music. Like he's really good. I looked into some of the backstory of this movie. Apparently the producers really kind of fucked it up because they kind of would force Neil Marshall and David Harbour to do different takes they didn't really want to do. David Harbour and Ian McShane rewrote lines because of that as well.
Because I'm guessing they're fans. Like
David Harbour is really proud of it, and I can see why.
He would need to be after all that costume stuff they put him in.
He's really good. Yeah,
he looks great.
I thought he got jacked. Apparently, it's a bodysuit.
Yeah,
because I saw a shot from the side, and I was like, "That's not a real torso.
No,
it's too big and broad. It doesn't make sense." But it's kind of cool. I like the aesthetic. There's some really cool gore. Just wish it was better.
I'm trying to think, what was something I watched recently that I was that
doesn't have to be a movie.
Doesn't have to be good. Well, you know what? I'm gonna plug that podcast I've been listening to. Then,
okay.
Mobile Suit Breakdown. So as it's known on this, I'm a big fan of Gundam. I'm a big fan of building Gunpla and things like that. So is
that where you build the little kits and you paint them?
You don't have to paint. I'm not going to get it. Yes,
okay,
it is. Okay. You snip them together, you put them together, and you got a little robot, or you got a big robot. Depends on what you want to pay for.
See, I would get those, and I would just play with them and lose everything.
Well, the more you play with the pieces will snap off, and then you need cement to put them back together.
Cement?
Yeah, because they're not action figures. They're supposed to pose them.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever, Matt.
But they're meant to be. But either way, this comes from as of last year is the 40th anniversary of the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise. So these two folks put together this podcast that is like so many other podcasts where it's like, we're going to watch every episode of this series and talk about it.
There's a podcast sorry to cut you off. There's a podcast I listen to called BVS by the Minute, where one of the head writers from Screen Rant Stephen Colbert, not the same Stephen Colbert,
obviously,
or whatever. He watches. Him and his partner watch BVS 1 minute of BVS and analyze everything that happens.
See, there's a really great podcast I watched. I used to listen to all the time called Star Wars Minute by Minute or Star Wars Minute, where they went through every part of Star Wars minute by minute, all the movies, because there is enough information out there they could fill that.
Yeah.
So I guess they could do that with BVS because there's enough backstory behind DC Comics.
One of the things I discovered they're on like, I don't know, 30th episode maybe or something like that. Each minute is like a small movie, which is kudos to Mr. Snyder for putting together these tight little, like everything is very methodical with him.
But
that scene, they haven't gotten to there. They're not even through the first quarter of the movie yet. But
so what they do in this one is they talk about the episode, the original series. They go over it. They talk about some of the background, talk about what's happening with the characters and everything. But what's different is, as I mentioned, is it's not like a table discussion where they're like going back and forth. It's edited in between segments where they'll talk about things that happened, and then in the latter part they'll be like, oh, well, we talked about this that showed up in it. Let's talk about the history of that. And it becomes an informational and educational history science.
What's an example of something they would talk about that you remember?
So one that really stands out is during one of the episodes where the White Base and the Gundam and everything have to descend back into Earth. They start off in the space colonies. They have to go back to Earth. They have to do a moment of re-entry. Which they're all freaked out about. They're like, I don't know if the Gundam's going to make re-entry. We can't get it in time. The other enemy robots are just melting and breaking apart in re-entry. So they bring in one of their friends who does physics, and they talk about what is the science behind re-entry in the historical context of 1979. Or they'll talk about like the history of kamikaze attacks, because several characters do that in its relation to like Imperial Japanese history, or what happens. One thing I found super fascinating that I didn't know, there's a lot of stuff I didn't even know about, is after the first episode, lots of people who were on the colony that got attacked end up refugees. And that would have been on the mind of the creators in 1979, because after the Vietnam
Gundam
War.
Is 79.
Yeah, 1979.
Jesus, it's so long ago.
40 years.
The animation holds up?
No, sometimes it
looks old.
It looks better than many of its contemporaries, but you can tell there are some episodes that are better than others. But they bring up that it's like at that time there was a giant immigration crisis that was going on to different parts of not just Japan but
Southeast
China and
Asia,
Korea because of Vietnam. And it was called like the Indochina refugee crisis. And so that was something the creators would have been commenting on, using Gundam as a way to talk about it. And so I was like, I didn't know that. So essentially it's somewhere between a recap, a review, and an educational
cultural
podcast.
Analysis. Yeah.
And it's very well created. They make their own music in it. It's not like laugh out loud comedy. It's very calm and very chill and very relaxing. It's like, oh, Nina, did you know about this? No, I didn't know about this. Or I do know this because I went to Japan.
Not the podcast for me. I would be like, get to the explosions and the space battles.
Well, like in the last episode they had was this very particular moment where at the end they're like, and now we have to talk about everybody who just died. And so they list off all the characters and give them a farewell. Like, because over the 2 episodes, entire platoons of bad guys died, but they're all named characters because Tomino, who created the series, is like, well, this is a war story. You know, it's not a monster of the week. Like, all these people, these individuals that you fight are people. And so, like, they talk about, like, and they try to keep it as spoiler-free because one guy loves the series and the girl who's watching it has never seen it before. And then they add in their personal expertise. Like, they're both like involved in martial arts. So when they talk about the way the Gundam is fighting here is very similar to judo. So they talk about the history of judo, or then they talk about, or very similar to kendo. We'll talk about the history of kendo. And it's really good. Like, I've been recommending it to people. I'm like, this transcends what normally could be a very boring fan particular podcast into something more interesting, because they found a way to talk about all kinds of other educational prospects in it. It's really good.
Do you want to talk about we mentioned it before we went on the air, the truth that makes everything fly, or whatever?
Right. Well,
what's it called?
They bring up the Minovsky particle, which is something that's in Mobile Suit Gundam.
Not a real thing, but in the universe of Gundam.
It is something that was discovered around the time that everything happened, coincidentally, that allows like the tiny little nuclear reactor, subnuclear reactors in mobile suits to work. But it also allows for beam weaponry to operate, so you can shoot lasers and things.
And there are swords and all those things as well.
But the downside of it is, in order to have cool close combat things, is it works also as an EMP and affects communications. So that's why there's no like heat seeking, or there's no like, oh well, if they're this far into the future, couldn't they just send a drone? No, they can't, because the Minovsky particles cause radio waves and communication waves to stop working. So you have to fight in close combat. And so that's their excuse, that these giant robots will be fighting hand to hand or with axes and beam weapons and things like that instead of all that. That's why you get in 8th MS team a lot of that guerrilla combat.
Yeah.
Is because they're like, they'll sit around and say, well, the Minovsky particle density is too high. We won't be able to see them without actually using sonar.
Yeah, I've only seen 3 of the Gundam series. And the reason I love 8th MS team is because it's literally like Vietnam era,
Southeast
like
Asia.
like guerrilla warfare, but with giant mobile suits
robots,
in the jungle. It's really fucking dope.
It's really good.
I remember there's the guy who he's a layover from the last team because they all got killed, and they call him the Reaper.
Call him the Grim Reaper
because he's got bad luck.
He's got bad luck. Terry ends up in all these teams.
But he's also really good.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
When he is able to get into a Gundam and he uses one for the first time, it's like, oh god, like he just slaughters one of these Zaku's. It's pretty cool.
It is. I really love that series. So Mobile Suit Breakdown, I really enjoy. I think anybody could really listen to it and enjoy, because the way they talk about the characters and the way they talk about things is very. It's not over the head. It's not like a Wikipedia article. They talk about like the relationships characters have with each other.
They're not talking about like fan theories that are really dense. They're talking about
very
cultural
like,
analysis or even like mechanical analysis of something in the
It's
series.
like if we were watching a show for the very first time and we knew nothing beyond it. And we're just like, that was interesting watching these characters do that. You can kind of see them respecting each other, this thing. It's like, yeah, that's it. And for me, I'm like, well, I know what happens. But
you're not watching their review.
Right. So I really enjoy it. That's something that I've been playing back and forth, just one episode after the other, just burning through it. Love it.
Cool. Do you like Gundams, Luke?
No, okay.
You've never seen a Gundam?
As they would say, the Japanese mega franchise. At this point, I think like Gundam in Japan is Star Wars to us. Yeah, it's an anime series.
Yeah, here.
But it has also become a giant model kit industry that gives Japan like millions of dollars.
Okay. I used to know
Yeah.
Yeah,
you can't miss it. Like this
is Gundam Wing.
Yeah.
Right there. One of my favorites.
When we were kids, that came on Toonami back in the day. Yeah. That's where a lot of people got into it, but that series has been going on for 40 years and is now like, I think they've compared it to other franchises. Like it makes more money as a franchise than like Batman worldwide.
I'm sure in Asia it does.
Yeah.
Like whenever Pacific Rim crushed in China and Japan and all that stuff.
Because Gundam alone, we also have to keep in mind mecha in general, which is
people love robots.
Yeah.
They're hip.
Everything
they're
from
happening.
Astro Boy, Gigantor to Evangelion and Darling in the Fray.
I just talked about Armored Core.
Yeah.
Was the game that I loved. I'm sure
a Japanese-made company.
That's Japanese owned or whatever.
Hideo Kojima, who did Metal Gear, created a series called Zone of the Enders, which is essentially his
I've played that game and it's dope.
It's his love letter to Gundam because it's the same plot essentially, but with
different stuff.
More dainty robots.
They are dainty. They have little ballerina toes.
Yeah. They zoom around. They don't walk.
Yeah.
But it's dope. That game rules.
Well, this has been The Movie Date with Rob and Matt, a podcast for people who like movies but don't want to be smug about it. You can check us out on Facebook and YouTube and Podbean and iTunes. And did I say YouTube? YouTube again, if I didn't say that. Subscribe. And if you guys have any thoughts on John Wick 3, leave it down in the comments below. Let us know, and we will talk to you guys.
Yeah, check us out on Facebook. We've got a group, and you can follow it there. We'll be putting up some updates and some new videos and things up soon.
Next episode, probably Wonder Woman 84 or Mulan, since they are now available for free. Wonder Woman 84 will be available for free when it comes out.
We'll talk about it. That would definitely be good once we get our hands on it.
Yeah.
But I've been Matt.
I've been Rob.
Take care. Be safe.
Take care. Be safe. I just repeated you.